We are going to, as you can already tell by the title, we're going to be doing a live tier ranking of all the books that I read last year. There are quite a few books that I've read. I think I read 92 books, if I remember correctly. And a lot of them I didn't get to talk about. Some of them I talked about because of Battle of the Booktuber. Some of them were part of like blogs and things like the Mystic Readathon. Some of them, like if you were part of like Margaret's readathon, like we may have talked about different books we were reading in the chat and stuff like that. But as far as like actual content, I didn't really do a lot of like reading blogs outside of like specific projects or like wrap ups. I did a couple of TBRs here and there throughout the year. So there are so many books that I feel like I didn't get to talk about that I'd like to have an opportunity to talk about. So that is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be tier ranking the books that I read last year. So hello, hi Bree. Hello, just a person. So yeah, we are gonna jump right into it. This is not in any particular order. So if you watched my best and worst books of 2024 video that came out earlier today, in that video I ranked them like specifically like in order of my top 5 best and top 5 worst books of last year. So this video is everything, not just the top 5 or whatever. This is everything. And also we're not going in any particular order this time. It's just the order that it randomly decided to like put the books in the list. So there's no real like order to this. It's just whatever comes up next in the queue is what we're going to go with. And it's going to be interesting because I feel like there are going to be books on this list that I forgot that I even read. So that'll be fun to be like, oh yeah. So that is why I have a category here that says like, I read this. I don't know if you guys can see my mouse. You probably can't. But there's a category in orange that is the second from the bottom. And it says, I read this. So I imagine that there are going to be books that I probably forgot all about. Now that category is not specifically for books that like I just forgot I read, because there are probably going to be a lot of books that will fall into that category if that's what it was. It's more so like a book that wasn't memorable. So like there are some books like earlier today when we were on Brittany Sprints, we were talking about the 7-Year Slip. And I had forgotten that I read the 7-Year Slip, but like once we started talking about it, like it all started coming back. And so if it's something like that where it's like, okay, now that I've like refreshed my memory, like I'm good. But then there are some books where I'm just like, I don't remember anything that happened in this book. Like I'm not even sure that I read it. Like maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I didn't read this. Like I don't know. So that's what that category is for. So without further ado, this is going to be super chill. There's nothing formal about this. Feel free to chime in the comments if you've read any of the books that we're talking about and like what your thoughts are. What your thoughts were when you read them, or if you haven't read them but you want to read them, if you guys have questions about them or whatever, like if you want to know why I put it in a specific category or whatever, like feel free to ask those questions. But this is going to be very chill, very low key. I could have done this as like a formal sit down video, but I just didn't feel like filming it and then having to edit it. So doing it this way, I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone and I don't have to edit anything. So you guys are getting like the raw footage of what it would look like if I were going to actually film this as a sit down video. So here we go. So the first one is Stephen King's 11/22/63. And I'm also not gonna, I'm gonna try my best anyway to not use my like ratings for this to inform like what category I put it into, because it will be really easy. There are 5 categories here and there's usually 5-star ratings, so it will be really easy to say like, oh, the books that gave 1 star like put at the bottom, books that gave 5 stars put at the top. That would be too easy. That would be boring. So I'm gonna do my best to not look at what I rated things in like Storygraph and just kind of go off of like just kind of like freestyle here based on like what my thoughts are now. Because also sometimes you read a book, you rate it, and then like some time passes and you're like, actually, that book wasn't, you know, a 4-star. That book wasn't a 5-star. You like want to change your mind. So this is what we're gonna do here. So for 11/22/63, I think I'm gonna put this in the not the worst category. I would have put it in the you are so close category. But oh wait, maybe I should move myself out of the way because you guys can't see what I'm doing. There we go. I was gonna put it in the you were this close category, but it was long and I hated the romance. And so for those 2 reasons, I feel like I can't in good conscience put it in the you were this close category because it really wasn't that close. for those reasons. So yeah, I think we're gonna go with not the worst. Also, just to break down the categories, I have Where Have You Been All My Life? So like these are books that like I don't know how I made it this far into life without having read these. These like changed my life for the better. The You Were This Close, which is like you almost were a 5-star, but like something about you didn't hit the mark. Not the worst is like average. I read this, we went over that, what that category is for. And then regretting my life choices is I can't believe I wasted my time reading this book. Like I wish I could go back in time and do anything else in the time that I spent reading this book. So the next one is 1984. And I did like this, but I think that this book wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. I had heard like such great things about it, and so that's why I wanted to read it. And I read it and it was okay. Like I will say that like I think it's chapter 9. Chapter 9 in 1984 was my favorite part of the book, but I think a lot of the stuff that led up to it was kind of like blah, I don't care. And then even like some of the stuff that happened afterwards was like, it was okay. So I'm gonna also put this in the not the worst category. Next we have Satan's Affair. And this is the prequel to, well, sort of a prequel to Haunting Adeline. And I buddy read this. I've been buddy reading the entire series with Donna. So we're reading the last book in the series this month. I think we start on Mondays and we're going to start that next one. But this is the first one. And this book is tricky because I don't really feel like this book fits into any of these categories, to be quite honest. It's definitely not a Where Have You Been All My Life? Like, for sure, absolutely not. It's also not a You Were This Close. Not the worst is maybe where I'm thinking I might put it. Because I feel like I read this. I feel like it was good enough that like to put it in the I read this category is like kind of doing it a disservice. The writing I did not really enjoy, but like the story was kind of wacky. But the ending was the best part. If the ending of this book and the plot twist that you get at the end of this, if that like didn't happen, then this would probably be a either I read this or regretting life choices. But the plot twist alone, I think warrants it to be put in the not the worst category. And next we have Love of My Afterlife. This our buddy read this with Leandra and Danny, and Leandra ended up DNFing it. Me and Danny finished it. Trying to think. I kind of want to put this in the I read this category because I don't really remember the stuff that happened in the book. I remember the conversations that the three of us were having about the book, if that makes sense, but I don't really remember the stuff that happens in this book. Like it's kind of a blur. I just remember being so surprised because what just happened? My computer just went black. We love that. Hopefully you guys can still see and hear me. I don't know what just happened. But I remember being so surprised that Leandra actually guessed the plot twist, even though she DNF'd the book. Like just listening to the comments going back and forth between me and Danny as we were still continuing to read it, Leandra was able to use our messages, our comments, and figured out the plot twist, which was so wild. So I think I'm probably going to put this in the I read this category. It's disappointing because, first of all, this cover is so cute. And like the premise of the book sounded cute. Like it just seemed like a book that I would really like. And it just kind of ended up being disappointing. Like it just wasn't nearly as good as I was hoping it would be. It didn't live up to the expectations in my mind, like at all. The next book, especially if you already watched the best and worst books of 2024 video, you already know where this next book is going. It goes without saying that this was my number one book of 2024. Like this was my favorite book that I read all year last year. So Alone with You in the Ether, Olivia Blake, Where Have You Been All My Life? I definitely want to read more books by this author because I need to know if like the rest of her work is this good or was this just like, a happy coincidence that she put out a book that's like this incredible. So no question there. I won't even like talk too much about that book because I talk about it in my best and worst video. So if you want to hear like why I love this book so much, go watch that video. Next up is The Alpha's Mate. And this is definitely 100%. Hello, Kiana. How's it going? The Alpha's Mate is definitely for sure gonna go in the I read this category. Because first of all, I forgot that I read this last year. It feels like I read this book so long ago, but I guess it was last year. And I'm trying to remember, like, why did I read this? I genuinely don't even remember why I picked this up, but there had to have been a reason. Because this is like a shifter romance. I don't even read shifter romances, so I don't know why I read this. This was on KU. I think it must have been for like a readathon prompt or something. I don't remember if I read this in January or if I read this in February. If I read it in February, then I probably read it for the girl band readathon. But if I read this in January, I don't know why I don't know what I was doing in January where I would have read this book. I don't really remember. Maybe it was a prompt to like read an author that you never read before or something. I don't know. I have no idea why I read this, but it was a shifter romance. It was short. It was like fine, but also like the writing wasn't that great. I feel like honestly, I could have written this book, like, and I'm not a writer, so it's like there's nothing special about this story. It's not horrible, but it's not anything special either. And like I said, I don't really remember much of the details. I kind of remember the beginning. The beginning is like this guy is like a wolf, and this girl. Wait, is it the guy or is it the girl that's the wolf? I think the guy is the wolf. And there's this girl who like comes back to town or something for some reason. And then they like fall in love and she finds out that he's a wolf and that there's a bunch of other people who are in the town that she has like known all her life and didn't know they were wolves. And then I don't know what happens after that. I don't really have any memory of what happens after that. So yeah, that's gonna go in the I read this category. I hate the cover for the other page. I don't disagree with you at all. I personally don't like people on the cover of my books. Like if it's animated, like, like cartoon type of thing, like that's fine. But I just don't like real people on the cover of my books. So yeah, I completely agree. I could do without this cover and this man like this. Like unnecessary. Hello, Lily. How are you? Also, if you guys see me like looking over here, normally I have when I'm doing sprints, I usually have the sprints up on like my main monitor, and I'll have the timer off to the side. But for this time around, I have the sprints or the live off to the side. So like this is where all the comments are, and I have the tier ranking on the main screen so I can see what I'm doing. Just in case you were wondering why I keep like looking over here, because you guys are over here. Next we have Animal Farm, and this was good. What's funny is that Animal Farm ended up being what I thought 1984 was going to be. I really had such high hopes for 1984 because I feel like people have been hyping this book up for so long. And so reading it, I was just like, oh, that was it. But Animal Farm, I was like kind of blown away with how good this book was. Like, where's my copy? I think it's probably behind me. But I tabbed this book up. Hold on, before I rip my computer off the desk. I tabbed up this book. I don't know if you guys will be able to see it, like how much I tabbed it, but it is like really, really tabbed up. I don't know if it'll show on camera, but like there are so many tabs in this book from things that like I was highlighting when I was reading this. This book was crazy good. And I buddy read this with a couple of different people because I think I read this like on sprints. But I know like it was like Coda and like Nicole. I can't remember. I don't know if Kiana was part of it. I can't remember. But there was a couple of different people that like we like read this like on sprints. It was so good. So this is, I don't know, it's not like 5-star good, but it's definitely gonna go in the you were this close category for sure. Because I was impressed. I did not expect to like that book as much as I did, I'll be honest. The next book we have, first. Hello, Coda. How cool alive. That's not sprints, right? It's all good. You haven't missed too much. There are 92 books that we have to get through, and we've only gotten through, like 6 or 7 at this point, so you didn't miss much. So next we have Unwinding Anxiety. This was a book for my book club. I think we read this in March, I want to say, and it was good. It was really good. I think that was probably the first book that I had ever read that was kind of like related to like mental health and stuff like that. I've since read other books. Like after this book, I read a couple of other ones that dealt with like psychology and mental health and like your perspective on the world and how to reduce your anxiety and stuff. And we'll get to those books later. But this was the first one that I read for the year. And this was my first time reading something like this. And so I liked it for what it was. And I think that if I hadn't read those other books, I probably would put this maybe in like the Where Have You Been All My Life category. But I think that there are other books that are on this list that I ended up liking more. And so in comparison, this one just doesn't quite live up to the other ones that I read. So we're going to put this in the You Were This Close. But I do recommend this book. I think that if you are someone that struggles with anxiety, I do think that there are some good, like just kind of advice or like tips or tricks and like things that you can try to incorporate in your life to try to reduce your anxiety or manage your anxiety better. Because there were definitely some things that I was highlighting when I read books, especially like nonfiction books or like self-help books and stuff. A lot of times I will read them, like I'll have like a highlighting system. I mean, I always have a highlighting system, even if I'm reading like a fiction book, but specifically when I'm reading nonfiction stuff and like self-help stuff, I will have like a specific color that is just for like general information things, like, oh, this is something that'll be good to like refer back to it later, like just in general. And then I'll have like a specific color for like new words that I learned. So a lot of times when you're reading science books, psychology books, stuff like that, you'll come across different like terminology or different types of like mental health conditions, diagnoses, whatever. So I'll highlight kind of like SAT words or vocab words or whatever you want to call it. So I have a specific color for that. And then when it's like actionable items, so like where it's telling you like you need to do this or you should do this, like things that you can actually do, then I have like a separate color for that. So I can always go back and refer to the things that are that in color when I want to like actually do something, like use the information. Because it's one thing to read it, it's something entirely different to actually apply it and like implement it in your life. So that's why I have those colors separated. So there definitely are some things in this book that I remember highlighting and being like, oh, these are actionable things. Have I gone back to those things to actually do them since I read this? No, I have not, but I need to. And I have the book behind me. So I do need to go back and like refresh my memory on what those things were so that I can do them. But yeah, I definitely would recommend this. It's a great place to start. I'll say that. It's not going to like fix your life, but like it's a great place to start. If you're looking for somewhere to start, this is a good place to start. Oh, I forgot to turn Nightbot off. Completely forgot. Oops. Yes, for Animal Farm, yes, it was really good. And it was short. The fact that it was like so interesting, like it was very fast paced, like it really packed a punch for such a short book. I was impressed. Too bad. Yeah, same. I wasn't a big fan of 1984. It wasn't bad. It just wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. I think I was expecting, like the way that I felt when I read Animal Farm, I was expecting that same type of energy going into 1984, and it just didn't hit. Like I said, chapter 9, I love chapter 9, but anything outside of that was just kind of mid, you know. Breaches person, it's saying hello to everyone. I'll rewind them on 2 times speed. I'll be back. Okay, cool. Hello, Dakota. Please ignore Nightbot. I forgot to turn him off. Or you can, instead of drinking wine, like I have my water, you can still sip and hydrate. But ignore the wine emoji there. I forgot to turn him off. Hello to Dakota and Kiana. Satan's Affair. Yeah, not the worst. Not the worst. Hello to Donna. Okay, late. Hey, it's all good. Ow. Oh my gosh. So throughout this experience, this live, you may see different moments where I like wince or I like look like I'm in pain. It's because I am. I slipped on the ice yesterday and fell, like very much like cartoon style, like slipped, feet flew from underneath of me. I was like airborne for like 2 seconds and then like fell flat on my back. So I am in a lot of pain right now, especially like my neck and stuff. So like certain times where like I move and turn, I have to be very careful because I'm in so much pain. My neck, my shoulders, my back. It's to the point now, like yesterday was just like the back of my neck, the sides of my neck, but now like even the front of my neck is hurting, which has never happened to me before. I'm like, am I okay? Like I've never had the front of my neck hurt before, but like my whole neck is hurting. My shoulders are hurting. My back is hurting. Like my sides, I don't know if it's like my ribs because I'm not really good with anatomy, but the sides of my body are hurt. Like everything hurts. So if you hear me like say ouch or like look like I'm in pain, it's because I am. So just pay that no mind. Hello to Lily. Hello to Coda. What's the title of the top tier books? Hold on. Are you talking about this blue one? I keep forgetting that you guys can't see my mouse. But are you talking about the blue one at the top in the Where Have You Been All My Life category? Is that what you're asking about? let me know. Because that one is called Alone with You in the Ether. It's by Olivia Blake. It is my #1 best book of the year. Currently reading. Ooh, nice. I remember when we did the live show last year. What was it, in March or April or something? I remember we were talking about it during the live show, Donna. So I'm glad that you're reading it now. That's awesome. Yep, Alone with You in the Ether. Hello to Rainy and Donna. Hello to Lily, Donna, Bree, and Rainy. Hello to Coda. Yep, there you go. Perfect. Yeah, it's been a whole thing. I'm in a lot of pain. It was to the point where like I didn't even get out of bed until like noon. Normally, even when I don't have to get up early, like I'll still get up early because I just naturally wake up early, and I'll use that time to like be productive. That's the time where like I'll clean the bathroom or do laundry or run the dishwasher, like just do like little miscellaneous things around the house that need to be done. Or if I have like a video to edit, like stuff like that. But like I was in so much pain this morning, like I couldn't get out of bed. Also my computer just went black again. I don't know why this keeps happening. I don't know if you guys can see when that happens, but for me, like my computer just goes completely black and then turns back on. But yeah, when I was in bed this morning, I like couldn't get out of bed because I couldn't lift my head. Like my neck is hurting so bad that when I'm laying down, like on the bed, I can't lift my head up by myself. Like I have to, well, I can do it by myself. Like I can't use my neck to do it. I have to literally take my hand and like put it on the back of my head and lift my head up so that I can get up because my neck will not allow me to like use the muscles in it. So yeah, not fun. Oh yeah, it is quite, it is what it is. I might, honestly, I'm hoping that it's just like maybe like whiplash or something, that it'll go away over time because this just happened yesterday. So I'm hoping that maybe this is just, things get worse before they get better kind of thing. We'll see. We'll see. Now StreamYard is not letting me click on the next comment, so I cannot see it. There we go. Love that I get. Oh my gosh. I don't know what my computer is doing. I hope that you guys can see in here because like my computer is like freaking out right now and I don't know why. I don't know what the problem is. You're welcome, Lily. We need to do Whisper Man. Oh, what's Whisper Man? Did you do still? Oh yeah, Rainy. Did you ever finish A Little Life? Whatever happened to that? But yeah, what is Whisper Man? Hello, Dakota. We need to do Whisper Man. I guess I'm gonna finish eventually. Hello, Chris. Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. 2 out of 3 caught it with the beginning. Take 5. Well, I'm catching up on the comments now, so probably by the time I finish catching up on the comments, you'll be caught up. Hello to Chris. Hello to Kiana. If you just start A Little Life halfway through. Oh my gosh. I can't wait till you get to the end. Based on what you've read so far, did you like what you read? Or are you kind of like unmotivated because you weren't really enjoying it? Oh, restart. Yeah, no, I definitely don't recommend restarting. And hello to Coda. All right, so we are caught up now. So now I'm going to go back down here. Okay, so the next one is Beach Read. And I read this. A buddy read this with Rainy. And I liked this. It wasn't a 5-star, but it was good, and I definitely understand like why people like Emily Henry as a writer. I understand like the dialogue. I think like the banter in that book was pretty good. This is the only thing that I've ever read from Emily Henry. This was my first experience with her as an author, so I definitely plan to read more from her just to get a better gauge of like if I like her as an author overall. Like, will she become an author? To be determined. But I did like Beach Read, and so this is going to go in the You Were So Close category because it wasn't bad. I didn't dislike it. It was better than like the books that are in the Not the Worst category, but it wasn't on the same level as Alone with You in the Ether. So we're going to put it with the You Were So Close. Okay. Well, that's good. At least you weren't hating it. Buddy Beach Read. Yep, it was. It was good. Hello, Jamie. How are you? This is one of, okay. Yeah, I mean, I want to read a lot. Like, I hear Book Lovers is good. That's one that I definitely want to read. I hear mixed things about Happy Place, but I hear good things about Funny Story. So I want to read that. So yeah, I definitely want to like, read more of her stuff to get a better feel for her writing and stuff. Because this, maybe this is just a fluke. Like maybe Beach Read is just a really good book and the other stuff isn't great. I don't know. We're going to find out. Hello to Jamie. I did like Book Lovers a lot. Funny Story is so good. See, I hear good things about Funny Story, but Happy Place is the one that I'm just like, ooh, I don't know. It's like half the people like it and half the people hate it. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do with this. Might be my favorite. Okay, nice. All right, so the next one is Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. And I love this book. Like, I love it so much. Oh, yeah, I just realized you guys can't even see the books that well. But yeah, I love this. This book was fantastic. I was impressed. I didn't think I was gonna like it, I'll be honest. I talked about this in the raw footage of the best and worst video that came out today, but I think I ended up cutting it so it didn't make it into the final video that you guys see today. But Before I Let Go, first of all, was actually a book that I only read. Like, I never had any intentions of reading this book. I knew what it was. I remember when it came out. I remember when everybody was talking about it and they were loving it. And I saw this book and I was like, I have no desire to read this whatsoever. The book was about a bunch of things that I, one, couldn't relate to, and two, didn't really have an interest in. It's a couple who was married, had kids, got divorced, and now they're co-parenting, and then they're possibly, trying to figure out if they're going to get back together. And none of that sounded interesting to me. For one, I don't really like second chance romances, so that was like an automatic like strike for me when it came to this book. But then the fact that it's like, I've never been married, I don't have any kids, I've never had to co-parent, like none of these things just seemed, I don't know, interesting to me. Like I just didn't really care to read this book. So I actually only ended up reading this because Vanessa had asked if I wanted to go with her to a Kennedy Ryan. It was Kennedy Ryan and S.A. Cosby. They were doing like a signing or like a book event together. And I was like, sure, like I'll go. It wasn't far away, so I was like, sure, I'll go. And I was like, I can't go to this like signing, like this event for these authors if I've never read their books before. Like that would be crazy. So I was like, okay, well, I need to read this book so that I can like go to this event. So that's the only reason why I read Before I Let Go. Literally the only reason why. And honestly, I'm so glad that I did. It was so good, so much better than I thought it was going to be. I was just blown away. I was blown away. Like this made me a fan of Kennedy Ryan. And I think, I know for a fact that This Could Be Us is on this list somewhere. I don't know where it is in the list because this is kind of just like randomly shuffled. But that book, I'm just like, Kennedy Ryan she's putting something in her pages. Like I don't know if she's putting crack in the pages, but these books are so good and I don't know how she's doing it. So this is definitely going to go in the Where Have You Been All My Life category because this was so good. The next one is Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. This was a book that I thought I was going to love. I had like the utmost like highest hopes for this book. And it wasn't bad. It just wasn't what I was expecting. I don't know. I guess I just was expecting more, maybe. It was just okay. I'm trying to decide, does it go with the You Were This Close or does it go with the Not the Worst? I don't even know. I feel like, I guess I can put it in the You Were This Close category. When you read books, I don't know if anybody else has this experience, but sometimes when you read books, or even when you watch movies or whatever, sometimes you just get like a feeling when you're watching it or whatever. And there was a feeling that I was looking for that like I couldn't get to or whatever. Like if like almost like there was like an itch that I couldn't scratch kind of thing. There's another book on this list that I'll get to that gave me what I was expecting to get from Better Than the Movies. And so that book is probably going to go in the Where Have You Been All My Life category. But there was just something missing from this book for me. I was expecting like the feels. If you guys have ever seen, what is that movie called? The movie with, I don't even know what her name is. Laura something. It was like Laura, what is her name? Maybe her name was Laura in the movie. Maybe that's not her name in real life. Oh, To All the Boys That I Loved. When I never read the book, but when I watched that movie was so good. I just had all the feels. Like I was eating it up, just so excited to be watching this movie. And that's what I was expecting to get from reading Better Than Movies, and I just did not get that. So I guess we can put it in the You Were So Close category. I might move it down to not the worst. I don't know. We'll see. We'll leave it there for now, but we'll see. Next is All the Sinners Bleed. Oh, have you placed it? It did? Really? Frustrating. Frustrating. Why? I'm curious. I just got my first sticker order from. Oh, nice. Freaking great, but I didn't realize they come in a sheet form instead of pre-cut. Oh, so you have to cut them yourself. Are you gonna hand cut them, or do you have like something that can like what do they call it? Hold on, I have to reach for this thing, and it's gonna hurt my neck. But I have one of these like cutter things. I think it's in here. Yeah. Of course, there's a bunch of stuff sitting on top of it. This thing. Do you have one of these? Oh, you can't see me because I blocked myself with the comment. Do you have one of these things where you like put the paper through it and then there's like, where's that? There's like this thing that like cuts it across so that you can cut it on the angle that you want to cut it on? Do you have one of these? Or are you going to have to manually cut them with like a pair of scissors? Because that sounds like a lot of work to have to do it manually with scissors. Let's see. The next one, whoops. The next one is All the Sinners Bleed by S.A. Cosby. And again, I told you guys the backstory for this. I had never read anything by this author, but he was also at the same event that Kennedy Ryan was at. So I was like, I have to read. I can't just go to these events and like not have read these authors' books. So I read it, and it was good. It was really good. It wasn't like Where Have You Been All My Life level good, but it was good. Like I was pretty impressed. I didn't really know what to expect going into it. And the tone of it and the atmosphere of it was a little bit different than what I normally would read. But I was still impressed. It kind of reminded me, if you've ever seen, what is that movie? I think it's like Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman. Is that who it is? The movie where the quote from the movie is like, "What's in the box?" I can't remember what movie that is, but this book reminded me of that movie. If you guys know what movie I'm talking about, this book reminded me of that movie. Uh-oh. There we go. Okay. So we're going to put this in the, if it'll move. Why is this not moving? What is going on? Okay, there we go. Something, I think the page is messed up. It's like glitching. Okay. Let's go like that. There we go. Put this in the You Were So Close category. All right, the next one is A Blue Street Christmas. Yes, 7. Yep, that's the name of the movie. Thank you, Jamie. If you like that movie, you probably would like All the Sinners Bleed. The vibes, it's not like the plot is the same, but the vibes are very similar. Like I felt like if All the Sinners Bleed was going to get adapted, the people that worked on 7 would be the best people to adapt this movie. So thank you. Oh, nice. Hope dinner was delicious. Yeah, so Blue Street Christmas. That is the next one on this list. So here's the thing. I had set a goal for myself to read, I think like 4 Christian books or something. And I thought that I was gonna do that with like no problem at all. But then I didn't read nearly as many books in general, nor did I read nearly as many Christian books as I thought that I was like planning to throughout the year. So then we got to like November, December, and I was like, crap, I've only read like 1 or 2. I was like, how can I like fit this in? So I specifically started looking for short, like novella length Christian books. And it just made the most sense to read like Christmassy books because it was December, Christmas, Christian, like hello, like it just kind of all fell into place. So that was how this book ended up on my list, was because I was trying to meet my goals that I had set for myself. This wasn't something that like, oh, I heard great things about it and I put it on my TBR. Like it wasn't that kind of party. It was just I needed to hit this goal, and this was an easy short book that I could get access to. That like I wanted to read holiday books, so it fit that as well. I did not like this book at all. Kind of hated it. Not gonna lie. I wasn't expecting to not like this. I thought, what can go wrong? It's a Christmas book. This book was boring, number 1. Number 2, it seemed like these characters fell in love like over the course of like a couple of weeks. to the point where they're like getting married. I'm just like, you didn't even know this man existed like 6 seconds ago. Now all of a sudden you guys are getting like, what are we talking about? So yeah, I just the development of the romance, the development of these characters, it just wasn't there. Hated every second of it. So we're gonna put this in the regretting my life decisions category. That's where that's gonna go. The next one I read for the 5-Star Exchange, and it's Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll. And I was very surprised. I did not think I was going to like this book. The last time I read a Jessica Knoll book, I was like scarred because I read Happiest Girl Alive or Luckiest Girl Alive, whatever that book is called. And no one, including the synopsis of the book, told me that that book was about a school shooting. And so when you get to the chapter where that's happening, it's very detailed and graphic. And I was like, what the heck is going on? There's nothing as you're reading the story that like drops any hints that that's where we're headed. And so it just happens and you're just like, whoa. So I was very nervous going into another book of hers. I'm just like, she likes to throw things at you and not prepare you for them. And I'm not sure that I'm mentally ready for that. But I really like Bright Young Women. I think that this was a really interesting take on a story that a lot of people are familiar with already. It follows the lives of the survivors, survivors that have survived the attacks of a very famous serial killer. And in the, I guess in the same way that this book never actually refers to that serial killer like by his name, they only ever refer to him as the defendant. I will also not say like which serial killer this is, you know, kind of related to, because the whole purpose of the book is to avoid giving that person any more credit or power or notoriety than they have already gotten, because what this person did was awful, and the fact that it has basically made him famous as a result of doing something really awful is terrible. And so I liked what the book was like trying to do, and I like the fact that you know, she tells this story, and it's like based on a true story, like loosely, but it's mostly like fictionalized, which I think is interesting. It's like she kind of made up what she thinks these survivors, well, like what their lives would have been like. So I think that was like a really interesting, like creative take. But yeah, it was really good. I highly recommend if you like historical fiction or historical like crime fiction type of situations. Like this was really good. I'm gonna put this in You Were This Close. That's where that's gonna go. Next we have Butcher and Blackbird. So I buddy read this with Donna. Trying to think of where I want to put this. I think okay. So because I know Leather and Lark is on this list as well, because we buddy read that last year too, I'm gonna put Butcher and Blackbird in the You Were So Close, because I did like it, and I also like the audio for it. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this was probably the first audiobook that I had ever listened to that does like the, not sound effects, but like one of the things that I thought was interesting when I was listening to this book is that there will be times where in the book it would say like, oh, she giggled or she laughed or whatever. And in the audiobook, like she would actually laugh. I had never listened to audiobooks that had done that before. So I thought that was really cool. I realized now, like I've read other audiobooks since then that do that. So I realized that's not like a new invention or something that Butcher and Blackbird did. Like they're not the originators of this, but that was kind of like cool to me to get to like hear that kind of like graphic audio piece or whatever, because I hadn't had experience with that before. Like I've listened to graphic audios where it's like you hear if it's like, I don't know, like a tape recorder, or it sounds like there's a radio station or something like that. But like to hear like the stage directions, like, oh, she laughed, and then you actually hear her laugh. I was like, oh, that's kind of neat. So yeah, that was pretty cool. Let's see. Coda is caught up, so that's awesome. Really want to read. Yes, I recommend it. I think that if you, it's not nearly as graphic as Luckiest Girl Alive. I think that if Luckiest Girl Alive can be something that can be like very triggering. It's very graphic, so I definitely say like go into it aware of what you're getting yourself into. There are not trigger warnings in that book, and there really need to be. But with Bright Young Women, I think that the graphic stuff that you get happens in the very beginning, and it's, I think from what I remember anyway, the graphic piece of this is when the guy comes into the sorority house and is, you know, killing everybody or whatever. That, from what I remember, is the only thing that's like really, really graphic. And because you know going into this book that that's what this book is about, the survivors of that incident, then you are expecting that you're gonna get a scene like that. And it, like I said, it happens very early on in the book. So after that, there's not a ton of like super graphic descriptions. There may be moments where they reference the things that happened in that graphic scene, but like you don't have to relive it, if that makes sense. So yeah, I recommend it. I think it was great. Let's see. Only comment from catching up. You hated the romance. Yeah, I did. Please elaborate. What do you think could have made it better, unless you think it should have been left out altogether? So I think that it doesn't have to be left out altogether. I don't really know. I think the biggest issue that I have with the romance is that it was, one, very long and drawn out, which was just annoying in general. But that's not like, the end all be all. There are plenty of like slow burn romances. I feel like there was a lot of, I don't even know how to describe it. They spent a lot of time talking about her ex-husband or whatever that guy was to her. I think that was her ex-husband. Maybe it was her current husband and she just left him. I don't know. You know who I'm talking about. I think his name was like John or Jimmy or whatever his name was. They spent too much time talking about him. He spent too much time being a part of the story. I don't feel like he needed to be as much of a part of the story as he was. And then all the stuff that was going on with like what happened to her when he like messed up her face or whatever he did to her. They spent a lot of time dealing with like her recovery from that and stuff. And I'm just like, that's not what this book is about. I'm not saying that that wasn't something that, like, if you went through an experience like that, you would have to recover. You would have challenges like looking at yourself in the mirror or wanting to go out in public and things like that. Like, I understand that. But like, that's not what this book was about. And so I feel like we spent too much time on things that we didn't need to spend time on, things that were like not relevant to the story, and also wasn't super relevant even to the romance itself. It was kind of like, deal with that on your own time kind of thing. So yeah, that's the reason why I felt like the romance just wasn't great. Because it just felt off topic. It felt like a tangent that we didn't really need. Hello, how's it going, Lachette? How are you? All right, so next up we have The Calvary Road, and this was a book that I read as part of like my Bible study. I'm trying to think, did we? Yeah, we finished this. So we had been like slowly reading this like every week or every other week, and I just so happened to finish it in 2024. Do I remember it? Not that well, but I know that I have a lot of stuff highlighted in this book. So again, it's one of those things where like I need to take the time to review the things that I highlighted, but I don't remember them off the top of my head. So I'm gonna put this in. Maybe not the worst. Yeah, I feel like that's a good place to put it. Next we have Carrie Soto is back. And Carrie Soto was good. It was not as good as the other books that are in this same universe, though. So this is in the same universe as Evelyn Hugo, Malibu Rising, Daisy Jones. All of these books are all in the same universe. This book was not bad. It just wasn't as good as the other ones. And so I'm probably going to put this in the not the worst category as well. I think that's a good place for it to go. You don't expect tangents. We do. Well, okay, to be fair, 11/22/63 was the first King book that I've ever read. So if that is something that he does all the time in all of his books, I am not aware of that because I've never read anything else by him. So I guess if you've read other books by him, then you'd kind of, like you said, like you just kind of expected that, like you knew it was coming and it didn't bother you. But to me, with that being my first experience with him, I'm just like, bro, can we get to the point? Like, can we circle back around to like why we're actually here? Hello to Lachette. Hello, Dakota. I'm assuming that this comment is to be saying that that's the first King book that I've read. I'm assuming that that's why you're saying what. Yes, 11/22/63 was the first Stephen King book I've ever read. It's the only Stephen King book I've ever read, actually, at this point. Yeah. Oh, wow. My gosh. I'm so used to like talking and like moving my head and I talk with my hands and stuff that it's very weird to not be able to move when I talk. It's so weird. Yes. So Daisy Jones, the Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Malibu Rising, and Carrie Soto is back all take place in the same universe. They're not necessarily like, I guess you could call it's a series, but they're really like interconnected standalones. Like they don't go in any particular order. You don't have to read one in order to read the other. You don't have to read them in any particular order. It's not like one is the, part one, part two. Like they're separate stories. They just all take place in the same universe. So there will be characters from these different books that show up in each other's books, if that makes sense. Cake's like, oh, really? It's your favorite author. Nice. You've been reading it next month. Nice. I actually started it in February, since you said you were starting it next month. I started it in February of last year because Katie, I think, was doing a read along for it. So that was what made me, because I had already wanted to read this book. I'll be honest. The only reason why I wanted to read this book is because I had been seeing for a long time, every time I would go onto Hulu, I would see like the thumbnail or the trailer or whatever for the show. And as far as I'm aware, because I haven't actually watched it yet, but I need to, I'm pretty sure that James Franco is the main character in the show. And I am kind of obsessed with him because I think that he's gorgeous. So I was like, ooh, well, now that I know that it's a book, I need to read the book first before I can watch the show. So that was the reason why I wanted to read the book in the first place. And then when Katie said that she was doing like a read along for it, I was like, okay, well, then I'll just do it as part of the read along. I think that they finished it in like a month or two. I didn't finish it until like October. So it took me a very long time to get through that book. But yeah, it was good. And now I can watch the show. I can't wait. Probably not the best place to start with King. Oh, well, nobody told me that. Too late. Oh, wow. What a book. To pick as your first Stephen King. Yes, it is huge. It's like 800 or 900 pages. I can't remember. It is a very big book. Like I said, it took me from February to October to read it. So, yeah, it's a big one and not his typical type of story or vibe. Like, I felt like Fairy Tale had a similar. Oh, really? Okay. Hmm. No, it does. Wait, when you say it sucks because like it was poorly written, or like because it doesn't follow the story in the book, or does it suck because the acting is bad? Does James look gorgeous? That's really all that matters. Is James hot in the show? That's all I really care about. Oh no, yeah. You're a thriller girly. You should be. See, I have thought about reading Misery, but because I've seen the movie, I don't know that I care enough to read the book. That's the reason why I always like, if I know that something is a book, I will not watch the adaptation until I've read the book, because once I've seen the adaptation, I'm less incentivized to go back and read the book. And I'm pretty sure Misery is also like pretty long. I don't know that there's a such thing as a short King book. So it's like, do I really want to do that? I haven't read King in decades. Usually the show's movies are better nowadays. Hello, Glenda. How are you? Are you gonna love my answer for this? Wait, what is the answer? It means he looks hot, right? Misery's my favorite. Really? Okay. Okay. Anytime I think about that movie, I always just immediately think of Kathy Bates. I think that was the first time I had ever seen Kathy Bates, was watching that movie. I'm sure James is great, but he can't carry the whole thing. Sure, he can. He can carry it on his gorgeous face, on his lovely shoulders, on his six pack. Like, he can definitely carry it. I promise you. Misery, or maybe Carrie. I've thought about reading Carrie too. I've thought about that. Hello to Glenda. Carrie was good. Okay. Maybe I'll read Carrie, because I actually have not seen the adaptation of Carrie. I've never seen the movie, and I think they remade it maybe even a couple of times at this point. But I've never seen it before. I've never even seen the original, so that would be one that I probably would be more likely to read because I've never seen the movie. Oops. Before I answer, read the book. Movie follows the book really well, honestly, but the book delivers differences in the death scenes. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Hello to everyone that's here. Yes, I need to know the answer. Is he hot? The next book is Carval, Stephanie Garber. This is the first book in the Carval series. I started reading this series because what I really wanted to read was Once Upon a Broken Heart. And Once Upon a Broken Heart is a spin-off from the Carval series. And people will always tell you, like, oh, you don't have to read Carval to read Once Upon a Broken Heart. As I've said many times before, I am not one of those people that can do that. If I know that something is a spin-off of something else, I need to read the original so I can work my way to it. So I decided to start with Carval and work my way up. And I vlogged Carval. I have a vlog for that. I vlogged Legendary, which is the second book. And I also vlogged Finale, which is the third book, but I just have not edited and posted it yet. I read that in December, so still catching up on the backlog of videos. But yeah, I like Carval. I think that out of the three, Carval is probably my favorite. So I'm gonna put this in the You Were This Close. I think that this is fun and whimsical and adventurous, but also the stakes are pretty high at the same time. A lot of times I don't like things that are whimsical and magical because it feels too like fairy tale. And when people's lives are on the line, then I kind of get bored. Like I need there to be like higher stakes. But I think this book did a good job of balancing like the whimsiness of it, but also balancing out like some of the more like, oh no, we're all gonna die kind of aspect of it. So we're gonna put it in the You Were This Close category. Let me see. Also, it's fast paced compared to a lot of his books. It's actually not that. Oh, okay. It is one of his shortest books. Okay, okay. You might be talking me into this. You might be able to talk me into reading it. Hello, Meredith. How are you? This is so fun. I'll have to watch back later. Wish I could hang out. But with family today, it's all good. Pretty selfish of them to take me away from your live stream. All good. I appreciate you popping in to say hello. Hope the fam is well. Did not like Carval. Wait, explain. Please tell me why you didn't like it. I need to know. This is so fun. Oh, I don't know why this comment came through twice. That's weird. And it came through a third time. What is happening? You may like Carrie, but you can't get a general feel for King using it as an example either because it's only written in that. It's the only one written in that style. Okay, okay. You're really selling this misery thing. Okay, I will not cross misery off the list of possibilities. Also, I was gonna say we can't be friends anymore because you put Carrie in the middle, but then I saw Before I Let Go in the at the top, so I guess you can say, wait, what did I put in the middle? Oh, Carrie Soto. I was like, I didn't read Carrie. You're talking about Carrie Soto. Yes, it is in the middle. You are correct. I just feel like the other books in this universe are better. Like Evelyn Hugo is top tier out of all those books. Then maybe Daisy Jones. I don't know. Daisy Jones and Malibu Rising are kind of tied for me. They're kind of on the same level. And then Carrie Soto was underneath of that. I think the FMC was stupid. Also, I didn't get the magic completely. Yes, the magic was a little bit complicated to understand, like to imagine. If you are the kind of person that likes to try to picture what's being described, some of the magic was a little abstract. But also, I kind of liked that. I think that's kind of what I liked about it was how abstract it was, and I think that this would be amazing to see it get adapted, to see like how someone brings a story like this to life. I think that's one of the things that I actually liked about it. But yeah, the female main character, she was, yeah, you know. Girl, you know, I got you on thrillers. Did you think my recommendation expertise start with 90s horror films? Misery loves company. This is true. Hello to Meredith. All right, so next we have The Christmas Catch. This, very similar to how I read The Blue Streak Christmas, which is down here. Similar to how I read this, The Christmas Catch was also a book that I read because I needed to read. I think I said like a minimum of 4 Christian books to hit one of my goals. So I was like, Christian, Christmas book, novella, done. And unlike The Blue Streak Christmas, which I kind of hated, The Christmas Catch actually wasn't bad. I was actually kind of like into it, to be honest. I kind of wish it was longer. It was a pretty short book, but it was cute. It was just like cute Christmas, like wholesome book. It kind of reminded me of like OG Tyler Perry movies where everything always ends with like Christmas and church and not Christmas, but like church and like singing and whatever. It kind of reminded me of like that vibe. Tyler Perry has definitely gone a little, to the left now. A lot of his stuff is much more explicit and graphic. Back in the day, his stuff was very wholesome and it was funny and it had a good message. And I feel like that's how this book was. It was something that was like wholesome, had a good message. It was cute. It was sweet. So yeah, I'm going to put this in the, does it go in You Were This Close or does it go in Not the Worst? Um, hmm. Maybe I'll put it in the not the worst, because I don't know if I would say You Were This Close. It wasn't that good, but it was good. If you're looking for like a short Christmas book for next year, or I guess later this year, check it out. Okay, next up is The Chain. This book, I was kind of surprised at how much I liked it. I was nervous because it was one of those books that you hear a lot about, and then all of a sudden, like you stop hearing about it, and it's like, oh, what happened? Like, do people not like it anymore? Like, what's going on? But I read it and I enjoyed it. It was pretty good. I will agree. I think I talked about this on Sprints, and it was like me, like Coda, Vanessa. We were talking about this book on Sprints one day, and Vanessa had said that part one is better than part two. I think it was Vanessa that said that part one is better than part two, and I do agree. I think that part one of the book was better than part two of the book, but part two was fine. Like, it wasn't bad. It just wasn't as like thrilling, and like it didn't have you quite on the edge of your seat as much. Like, I honestly kind of feel like part two was unnecessary a little bit. I guess the author wanted to kind of wrap things up and like kind of like tie a bow on it and cut those loose ends, or tie those loose ends off. But I feel like it could have just ended with part one, and it probably would have been a little bit stronger of a book, a little more impactful, a little more dramatic of an ending versus like giving it a full resolution. Yeah, some of the stuff that happened in part two, I'm just like, we didn't really need this. Like I said, it wasn't bad. It just was like, I don't really know if we needed this. I don't know that anybody asked for all this extra information. But yeah, so I'm gonna put this in the You Were This Close category. I think that's a good place for it. It was cute. It was very cute. Very wholesome. Like it's a little Christmas book. I think they were, I think it's I don't know if it's considered second chance romance or not, because I can't remember if they were officially together. I think they were. I think they were together like in high school. They were like high school sweethearts, and then they broke up, and he became like an NFL star or something, and I forgot what she did. But he got injured in the NFL, and then he's back home to like recover from his injury, and so that's how they kind of like reconnect. And it's Christmas time, like I said, it's wholesome. It was cute. It was very cute. Read The Chain a couple years ago and definitely agree. Yep, yep. Okay, so next we have The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams. This, I don't remember why I read this. I think, yeah, no, never mind. I was gonna try to come up with something, but I actually don't remember why I read this. It was good. It wasn't great, but it was good. I just don't know why I even picked this up. I think that maybe I was in between books. Like maybe I had finished a book and I maybe was going to be starting a buddy read or something in a couple of days. So I needed something to like fill the gap. And for some reason I decided to pick this up. Like I said, I don't really know why I picked this up. It wasn't like for a readathon, or it wasn't for a goal. Like I don't know. I don't know why I picked this up, but it wasn't terrible. I'm going to put this in the not the worst category because there are other books by this author that I read that are going to show up in this list that I feel like belong in the You Were This Close category. And the cheat sheet was not as good as those books. So by default, it needs to go into the not the worst category. Yeah, I said earlier, I forgot to turn him off. So you guys can just ignore him. I should probably go and get an additional bottle first. Nice. Next, we have Secret Circle. This is the second book in the Secret Circle like series. Again, it was good. I like these Secret Circle books because they're kind of like, I don't know how to describe them, but like they're like fun. There is some drama to it and like some teen angst, but like also, there's magic and it's like all these secrets and stuff. It's like a very fun book. I wish I had read this when I was like in high school, because this probably would have been like my favorite series if I had been a reader back then. Because like there's drama and there's secrets and all this kind of stuff that you're kind of like uncovering and stuff. And then, like there's darkness and stuff, but like there's magic, like it's angsty, like it's fun. It's not a great book by any means. Like don't get it twisted. Like I'm not recommending that people go out and read this, but if you're someone who's like, for that age group or enjoys reading books that are for that age group and likes magic and teen angst, then yes, I would recommend it for that reason. So I'm going to put this in not the worst. And I do plan on continuing the series because I've enjoyed the first two books. So yeah. The next one is Cruel Winter with You. by Allie Hazelwood. And I took a gamble on this. I really did. Because the last Allie Hazelwood, which was also the first Allie Hazelwood book that I had ever read, which I think it should be in this list somewhere, I did not like it. And I had pretty much decided after reading that book that I was never going to read anything else by Allie Hazelwood again. But then I stumbled upon this book, and it was on Kindle Unlimited, and it was short, a little short Christmas novella. And I was like, okay, it's a Christmas book. So like, and I think this was before I read A Blue Street Christmas. So in my mind, I still was under the impression that you can't go wrong with a Christmas book. I'm like, it's Christmas. Like, you can't go wrong. Like, the vibes and everything is already built in. Like, there's not a whole lot that you have to do to make a Christmas book be good. So I was like, I'll give it a shot. And I was surprised. I really did like it. I don't know that I would, again, read any long form books by Allie Hazelwood. The only other book that I want to read by her is Check and Mate. But outside of that, I don't really have a desire to read anything else by her because I don't know that I like her adult stuff. But this little short story, it was great. It reminded me of the year before I read A Little Magic by Lindsay Lanza. It kind of reminded me of that. And I think I talked about this. Maybe I talked about it in the cozy Christmas tag or something. I think I talked about it in that video, that those two books kind of like remind me of each other. But yeah, it was cute. I liked it. You were looking for like a little short second chance romance, Christmassy, book. And I don't even know if it was necessarily Christmas. I think it was just like wintertime. I don't know that they even mentioned like a specific holiday. Like, they were home for the holidays, but I don't know if they ever specified Christmas. It could have been Hanukkah. I don't remember. But yeah, I liked it. So we're going to put this in not the worst. I love the chain, but then I also love the cabin at the end of the world. But no, just FYI, recommendation to you are always based on what I know your tastes are rather than mine. Okay, that's good. Do people not like Cabin at the End of the World? I feel like, was that the book that Rainey read? Was it last year or the year before? She read this book and like she like hated it. Is that Paul Tremblay? Am I thinking about the right book? She hated that book. I haven't read it, so I wouldn't know. I was the best video story. I love that. That's awesome. Let's see. We have Dark Matter. Dark Matter was another book that I had been putting off reading because I wasn't sure if I was gonna like it. Obviously, I bought it because I had heard good things about it, but then the longer it sat on my shelf, the less incentive I had to actually read it. And so, excuse me, I kind of was just like, I don't know. And I'm trying to remember what pushed me. I think the reason why I went ahead and actually read it was because it was on my self-destruct list for this year. And I was like, well, I don't want to unhaul it without having read it. So I went ahead and pushed forward and read it. Plus, I think what really got me to read it was the fact that it got adapted. I think the adaptation came out like either 2024 or 2023. So I was like, ooh, I can use this because I can use this book in this show as part of my Read It or Watch It series. So kind of like killing two birds with one stone, get this off of my self-destruct list, be able to read it without having to unhaul it, and then also be able to use it for content for the Read It or Watch It series. And it was good. It was really good. I was actually surprised. I didn't think I was going to like it, especially because it's like sci-fi, and I don't really like sci-fi that much. This was really good. I'm going to put this in the You Were This Close category because I was pretty impressed. I don't know why I went there. Why won't it move over? There we go. So yeah, that's where that's going to go. The next one is Death Note. Y'all know that I love Death Note. I'm going to put this in the You Were This Close category. I think that nothing is going to hit in the Death Note series the way that first book does, because it's your first kind of like stepping into this world and being like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy. So like once you're in it, things don't seem as crazy anymore, but it's still really good. Still love this. I think I have 2 more to read because this is part 4. I think I have to read 5 and 6 and then I'll be done. So I'm hoping to get that done this year for sure because I've been reading this series for like 2 or 3 years now. And the series is not that long. I just keep taking a long time in between books to actually finish them. So that's my fault. Let's see. Yeah, she did have it. Oh, okay, yeah. It's completely horror at its best. Really interesting. I kind of want to read it, but like the fact that Rainey hated it makes me hesitant to like want to read it. Definitely, yeah, it is. It really is. He is, and that's kind of what makes it interesting, though, is how arrogant he is, and then seeing different times where he gets outsmarted. I've always said that reading Death Note is kind of like watching a chess match, because, and I guess if you don't like chess, then maybe that's not a good analogy for you. But like, I enjoy chess, and so it's like watching these two people trying to outsmart each other, and both of them are always like 2 steps ahead. So it's like now you have to be 2 steps ahead to make 2 steps ahead. It's like, oh my gosh, like who's gonna come out on top? So it's a fun time reading this book and like seeing what they come up with and their strategies and stuff and how they try to outsmart each other. I have the best time with it. Hello, hello. How are you? Welcome. We're just hanging out talking about some books. Feel free to chill out with us and talk. If you've read any of these, feel free to tell us what your thoughts are on them. The next one, the picture is messed up, and that's my fault. So the picture of the next one was supposed to be a combo picture of a dead Jin in Cairo and the haunting of the tram car or something like that. These are the two novellas that are prequels to A Master of Jin. I don't know why the pictures came out the way that they did, but they came out wrong. It's fine. We'll pretend like it didn't happen. I am going to put this in the I read this. Oh no, we'll put this in the not the worst category. Because both of them, they were okay. They weren't great. But they were better than the actual novel, A Master of Jin. I did not like that. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why it came out like that. This one is just another version of this. It's literally just like the full picture. Why is this not working? It's like the full picture of this one that's next to it. So just ignore that. It's on there twice for some reason. I don't know why. But yeah, we'll put that in the not the worst category. They were good for the novellas that they were. They weren't anything spectacular. They weren't anything to run home about. They weren't anything that I'm going to be like, oh, you guys have to read this. Like, it's not something I would recommend to people, but like for what it was fine. I do recommend, however, if you're going to read A Master of Jin, I do think that you should read those two because there are things that happen in those stories and characters that you meet in those stories that do come up in A Master of Jin. You don't have to read them because they kind of will give you a little bit of a backstory or a little bit of a summary on like who this person is or what they're talking about in the book itself. But it helps to have a little more context of what they're talking about if you've read the stories yourself, if that makes sense. Could I also love Kevin at the end of the world? So you aren't alone there. Okay. Oh yeah, Haunting Tram Car, yeah. 018. Love this series. Interesting. Usually don't like novellas. Yeah. I was surprised. I was surprised that I liked the novellas more than the book itself. That was shocking to me because I thought for sure, like when I read the novellas, I was like, okay, it's kind of just like meh. Like it was fine. It wasn't bad. It wasn't good. It just was like, it was whatever. But because it was short, it was easy to get through. And so I didn't mind it. But then when I got to the actual book, I was like, this is taking too long to get to the point. Let's see. Love all of his. Interesting. After reading this series, that is an author that I honestly don't have a desire to read anything else from. If he were to be a part of a project, like for example, I think that he wrote a story in Out There Screaming, which is also on this list. We'll get to that later. But he wrote a story in Out There Screaming. I would read that. Like if he's part of like an anthology collection or something like that, I would read, his stuff, but like to go out of my way to read something that's like just his book, I don't see that happening for me in the future, I'll be honest. Next is I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reed. And first of all, didn't know what to expect going into this. I'll be honest. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. I saw that it was a Netflix adaptation and I saw that it was short and the title itself was intriguing. And so I was like, okay, add to TBR. Like that's really all it took for me to add it to the TBR. But I finally decided to read it. I think I read this for a prompt during Fablin. If you guys participated in the Fablin readathon, I forget what prompt it was, but I'm pretty sure that's why I read this book. But yeah, it was good. The quotes in this book are crazy. Like there are so many things that I highlighted in this book. It's insane. I definitely want to get a physical copy. I read this as an ebook, so I highlighted stuff in the ebook, but I definitely want to get a physical copy so I can transfer my annotations to a physical copy. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. I don't think I fully understood the book, I'll be honest. I said that I was going to do this and I just forgot, honestly. But I need to go back and read like more like Reddit threads and stuff, and watch more like explained videos to get a better understanding of like what happened, because you get to the end and I'm just like, wait, what just happened? I didn't dislike that. I just was a little bit confused. So I'm going to put this in the You Were This Close category. It could have been Where Have You Been All My Life if I had understood it better, but because I didn't really understand it, I don't feel like I can put it in the Where Have You Been All My Life category. However, this next one, Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone, that one for sure goes in the Where Have You Been All My Life category. I absolutely love this book. This was great. Highly recommend. Don't need to say anything else. Just go read that book if you haven't read it. The next one is Fake It Till You Bake It. This was a book that I read purely because I knew that I was going to be doing the See No Evil, Hear No Evil, Speak No Evil challenge with Vanessa and Bree and Katie and Leandra and all them. I knew that I was going to be doing that challenge. They didn't know, but I knew that I was going to be doing that with them when we met up. And so I was looking for books that had like food kind of as like a central part of the story or an integral part of the story, or a book that had like actual recipes like in it. So that was why I ended up reading this, is I was like, oh, Fake It Till You Bake It. It's about a guy who owns a cupcake shop. Perfect. And so that was how I came across this book. It was cute. It was simple. It wasn't anything special. It wasn't bad. It was just all right. So I think I'm going to put this in the not the worst category. That's where we're going to go for that. Also, I'm going to see if I can zoom this out a little bit, because now the blocks are getting a little big. Yeah, there we go. All right. Yep, you guys can see that a lot better now. All right, so the next one is The Christmas Tree Farm. I don't really remember reading this. What was this book about? I don't know. Oh, I think this lady was like living overseas or something, like teaching overseas, and then she comes home. I don't remember why she came home. And like her family owned a Christmas tree farm and they were selling it or something. And then the next door neighbor wanted to like turn the Christmas tree farm into like a dirt bike park or something. I don't know. I don't really remember. We're going to put this in the I read this question mark category because I don't really remember it. Not very memorable, clearly. Final Girls. We're going to put Final Girls. We're going to put Final Girls in the not the worst category. I liked what the author was trying to do. I love the fact that it kind of flipped a horror slasher like rule on its head. Like the virginity rule that like, oh, the only way for you to survive is for you to be a virgin. I like that it kind of flipped that on its head and made it such that the only reason why she did survive was because she wasn't a virgin. I thought that was kind of cool. But other than that, I feel like the story was just, it was kind of lacking. Something was missing. I think it was the backstory. I think the backstory is what I didn't like. I like the present day story of like this lady who has like come into her life and she's like kind of like something's off about her. I like that. But when you go to the backstory of her as like a teenager or she was in college or whatever it was with her friends, that story was kind of boring. I feel like he should have done more with the backstory. Could have made it more interesting. So yeah, it's going to go in the not the worst category. Next we have Finale. So definitely we're going out of order because I did Carval, which is the first book, and now Finale is the third book, and Legendary is in here somewhere, but I don't know where it is. We're going to put Finale. We're going to put Finale. Where did I put Carval? And then You Were This Close? I don't know. I guess we can put it in not the worst. I was trying to decide between You Were This Close and not the worst. I couldn't decide where I wanted to put it. But I think I liked Carval, like I said, the best out of the three. So I don't think that I can put Finale in the same category as Carval. Let's see. Next we have 5 Survive. So for this, I was not a fan of this. I'm gonna. Do I regret my life choices reading Five Survive? I don't think it was that bad. I kind of want to put it in the I read this question mark, but this it's not really like accurate because I do remember reading it and I do remember like the stuff that happens. It just I don't know, it was kind of boring. It wasn't that good. It was like a lot of hype for nothing. So I guess we can put this in the not the worst section. I might move it. I don't know. We'll see. We'll put it there for now, but I might move it. Next is The Fury. I really enjoyed this. It's funny because I recommended this to someone and someone like in real life, and they read it and they were like, "Man, this book wasn't good." Blah 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 blah. And we are just, I guess, we're just very have different tastes because I did not really care for The Silent Patient. I thought that The Silent Patient was extremely predictable. So I was not impressed at all. But The Fury, I liked. I thought that the plot twist that you get, if you get a couple of plot twists, so when those start happening towards the end of the story, I thought that was good. So I like that. And like he's the opposite, where he loved The Silent Patient and he didn't like The Fury. So I don't know what that says about this book or what that says about me or whatever. But I enjoyed The Fury. I had a good time with this. I also think that it helped that this book does, again, if you watched the best and worst video that came out today, I talk about everyone in my family has killed someone, and I also talk about every time I go on vacation, someone dies, and I talk about in the fact that those books, the way that it's written, the person that whose life you're following, the narrator or whatever, they tend to talk directly to the audience, like they're talking to you. And The Fury also does that, and so I think that maybe that helped as to why I liked this book as much as I did, because I like when books do that. So I'm gonna put this in the "You Were This Close" category. People may disagree, and that's fine. And next we have Ghost Station. I buddy read this with Leandra and Danny, and there was a lot of potential, but the execution failed to deliver. That's what I will say. So I think I'm going to put this in the I read this question mark. I didn't forget that I read it, and I do remember most of the stuff that happens in this book, but I feel like it is not good enough to be put in the category with not the worst. Although I could put it in the regretting my life choices category. Maybe I'll put it there actually. I think we're gonna put it down here. Because I just got to the end of this book and I'm just like, there were so many missed opportunities. I think that's the issue that I have with Ghost Station, is that there was a lot of potential. There are a lot of things the author could have done with this book, and they just didn't do any of those things. And there's also like seemingly like some plot holes and things. So I'm just like, yeah, no. Next we have The Christmas Guest. So this was something that I picked up last month just because, again, like I had some gaps in between, like the time that I would finish a book and the time that I was supposed to be starting like a buddy read or something. And so I needed something that was like short that I could like fit in and get done. And this was also, this was also around Christmas time. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. I came across this book one day. I was in Barnes & Noble and I forget what I was in there looking for. Yeah, I can't remember what I was in there for, but I went in there for something. And I was just browsing around and I was like, oh, Peter Swanson wrote a Christmas book. I've never read anything about Peter Swanson before, but I'm pretty sure that's the author that wrote The Kindworth Killing or The Kindworth Saving. I think one is part 1 and one is part 2, but I don't know which is which. And I hear good things about those books. I hear like pretty amazing things, honestly, about those books. So to see that he wrote a Christmas book, I was like, oh, okay, this might be a good way for me to like dip my toe into the Peter Swanson pool in like a little bit of like a, a smaller like taste test because it's a novella. It's really short. And it was Christmas time. It was good, but I feel like the ending like left a little to be desired, if that makes sense. I think that the story itself was good. I was like invested. I wanted to know what was going to happen. But then you get to the end, like I'm expecting a plot twist, right? Like that was the main thing. I was waiting for a plot twist, and then you don't get a plot twist. It's like, it's not like, oh, all this stuff has happened, and then surprise, like there's this thing you didn't know about. It's like there are these things that are happening, and then yes, everything that I just said actually happened. And so maybe that is the plot twist. Like everything that happened really did happen, because a lot of times there's always something that's going to come out of the woodworks at the last minute that changes everything. But that didn't happen with this book. Like what you got, I mean, what you saw was what you got. So I guess I was just expecting a plot twist that I didn't get. So for that reason, I'm gonna put it in the not the worst category. That's where we're gonna put that. But yeah, it was interesting. I will say that it was an interesting story, basically about this girl who didn't have any family. She was a university student who didn't have any family, and one of the girls on campus invited her to come, like, with her and her family for Christmas, and spend the holidays with her family. And she goes there, and then some stuff happens. I won't say anything else because I don't want to spoil it, and it's a short book, so it's very easy to spoil. So I'll just leave it there. But it was good. Next up is When the Moon Hatched. You guys know I did not like this book. I buddy read this with Danny, Leandra, and Brittany, and Rainey was also like kind of part of it. She had already read it, but she was like in the chat. We did not have a good time. Brittany had a great time with this book. The rest of us did not have a great time with this book. So yeah, we're gonna put this in the regretting my life choices because this book was way too long for it to have been the letdown that it was. Let's see. Next up, we have Haunting Adeline. I read this with Donna. I'm going to put this in the "you were this close" category because there's a lot of good stuff happening. Not good stuff, but there's a lot of like interesting things happening in Haunting Adeline. I think what's that? I think what I didn't like about it was the romance. I didn't like the fact that she fell in love with her stalker because it just didn't make any sense. Like she didn't even know this person, but she like fell in love with someone that she didn't know, had never seen, never had a conversation with. It was almost like she fell in love with the idea of being in love. Like I don't know, it just was kind of stupid how they fell in love with each other. It makes sense that he would be in love with her. He wasn't really in love with her. He really was obsessed with her. But we can call that love. That's fine if that's what they're calling it now. But she didn't know him from Adam, so I don't know why she felt love for him. Makes no sense at all. But that aside, they are both dealing with their own like individual things because our female main character, she is living in like this seemingly haunted house, and she's trying to solve the mystery of who killed her grandmother. So that was kind of cool. And then our main male character, the one that's stalking her, he is, I forget what his like job title is called, but he basically has his own company, if you will, that basically rescues people from like human trafficking. So that was also a really interesting story to follow that. But yeah, the romance, hated every second of that. The spice was good. The spice was very well written. I will say that it was very spicy, but the spice was very well written. But the love piece, I don't know. It was a miss for me on that. So we're going to put this in the "you were this close" category. Let's see. Without spoiling anything, here's my defense of who should read Oh my gosh. Don't read if you're open to bad things happening. Oh, Cabin at the End of the World. Okay. You're like connecting the dots in my head. You want to read something that's fast-paced enough, you can knock it out in one sitting. Read it if you don't have triggers. Looking into those could ruin some of the horror. Okay. Not to mention how things turn out. Read it if you define horror in a broad spectrum. Read it if you want more gay people in your mainstream horror. Read it if you like literary horror. Read it if you like what the heck is going on types of plots. Then drive forward towards resolution at lightning pace. And with that said, read it if you're a person who's happy with any ending. Interesting. You get in case where the ride to it made your heart race and your fingers turn pages. Also want to note that I've read it with my eyeballs. Interesting. Okay. See, I am still trying to decide what I want in a horror book, if that makes sense. Because I talked about this in today's video as well. I talked about the Eric LaRocca book that I read. And like that to me didn't feel like a horror book at all. It felt like it was weird. It was maybe eerie or unsettling, but like horror, like I don't know, it's just not what I pick up when I think of horror. I was kind of bored. I wasn't uncomfortable, but I understand how other people may have been uncomfortable reading the stuff that was happening in this book. But I was just kind of like bored. So I'm still trying to figure out exactly what I like when it comes to horror. So we'll see. We'll see. Next up is Home is Where the Bodies Are. I had a great time with this book. It was a really fun book because the family drama was so ridiculous, and like listening or like watching the three siblings tear each other to shreds was the best part of the book. Like the way that they would like insult each other and just it was fantastic. I had so much fun watching this dysfunctional family. The mystery was very predictable, so no points there. But for family drama and banter and all that, dialogue, A plus. Had a great time. So I'm gonna put this in. Should I put it in You Were This Close, or should I put it in Not the Worst? I'm gonna put it in You Were This Close. It can go there. Next up is Heart of the Deal. I liked this book. I think that it was a little too stiff for it to be like a favorite, but there are definitely a lot of things that happen in this book that feel very relatable because this is about this woman who is in her mid-20s and she wants to be married and stuff by the time she's 30, and she like works in finance. And so at the time that I bought this book, all of those things like were very relatable because I was in my mid to late 20s, was working in finance, like wanted to be married by 30, like all these things. And so reading it now that I already am 30, like it was interesting kind of like going back and like seeing like, oh yeah, like the way that she's thinking is the exact same way that I was thinking at that time. It was good. It was interesting. I think what I like the most about it, again, I think what I've noticed too is that a lot of times when I like a romance, I like a romance that has good commentary when it comes to mental health. Because Alone with You in the Ether is about two people with different mental health conditions that they're trying to love each other, and it's complicated because of their condition. Before I Let Go very much centers around these two people who are dealing with different things, but mostly grief, and the way that grief takes a toll on your mental health and like how that affected their relationship. The Heart of the Deal, one of the guys that she is very much like, I don't know if I want to say in love with, but one of the guys that she's really into. I think I forget. I don't know if he's depressed, if he's bipolar. I can't remember, but there's something there. And so seeing how she deals with trying to be in a romantic relationship with someone that is struggling with whatever it was he was struggling with, I thought was very interesting and fascinating. So I'm gonna put this in You Were This Close because it could have been better. It just was a little bit stiff. I think that this book would not be a book that would take off like mainstream because it's a little bit stiff. There probably needs to be a little more fluff or a little bit more like Taylor Swift references or something in it for mainstream to pick it up. But I liked it for what it was. I do think Cabin is worth the read, but yeah, it gets pretty gory and messed up. It also made me tear up at parts. And any book that can make me do that is a win. Interesting. Okay. That's what I want in a horror book. I want to feel like I want to actually feel while I'm reading one or more of the following: thrilled, scared, horrified, unsettled, disturbed, creeped out, shocked, mortified. Broad definition, yeah. See, like for me, I want to be scared. I want to be like not horrified, because a lot of times when people say, "Oh, it's horrifying," they're usually talking about like body gore or something like that. Body gore doesn't do it for me. I don't really care about stuff like that. That doesn't affect me. Like I don't really care if it's like creepy. Like creepy doesn't do it for me. Like I want to be scared. Like scare me. That's one of the things that I liked about We Used to Live Here. When I was reading We Used to Live Here, I was scared, especially like I don't know if anybody here has read that book, but like the stuff that was happening in the attic and We Used to Live Here, I was scared. I was looking around my own house like I was freaked out. That's what I want when I read a horror book. I want you to scare me. If you can't scare me, then it's not horror. Let's see. Hunting Adeline is next. And I think I'm going to put this in the You Were So Close or You Were This Close category. I really liked Hunting Adeline. I actually think that I liked Hunting Adeline more than I liked Haunting Adeline. Because I think that Hunting Adeline dealt with some more like real stuff. I feel like Hunting Adeline, like I said, you have this unrealistic romance budding between these two people that don't even know each other. And then you also have like this paranormal aspect to it that was a little bit confusing to understand. Like, is it paranormal or is she just like tripping? Like, is she hallucinating? Like, what's happening? I feel like Hunting Adeline was a little more like grounded in reality, dealt with some heavy stuff for sure. And also, I don't think the spice was as good in Hunting Adeline, but I think the plot was better in Hunting Adeline. So it's gonna go in the "You Were This Close" category. Coda, you and I are looking for the same thing in horror. High fives. Let's see. Next, we have Icebreaker, the infamous Icebreaker. I only read this book because of Icebreaker Gate, and I needed to know whose team I was on. I enjoyed this book. I didn't think that I was going to, but I did. I had a really fun time. It is definitely a book that I want to read again, but I don't know if I ever will because there are like 2 or 3 more books out in the series now that I haven't read yet. So I need to read those before I try to go back and reread this again. But yeah, I had a great time with this. We're going to put this in the "You Were This Close" category because this was fun. So much more fun than I thought it was going to be. Next is the Inheritance Games. I sadly did not enjoy this. I'm not gonna say I didn't enjoy it, but I just didn't understand what the hype was around it. A lot of people love the Inheritance Games. People talk about it all the time. It's like a lot of people's favorite series. I was underwhelmed. I was not impressed. Maybe I need to go back and reread it. This is one of those books where I'm like, maybe I could give it the benefit of the doubt and say that I might have been distracted when I was reading this, and so maybe I wasn't like fully focused on what I was reading. So I will give it another chance. I don't know when that'll be, but I will say the first go around, I was underwhelmed. I'm gonna put this in the "I read this" question mark because I don't really remember a ton of things that happened. I just remember being like, this is kind of boring. Next is Blood Justice. I absolutely loved Blood Justice. This was amazing, just like the first book. This is the second book in the series. The first book is what is the first book called? How did I forget? Blood, blood, blood. What the heck is this book called? Now this is gonna drive me crazy. I was gonna say Bloodborne, but that's not what it is. Oh, Blood Debts. That's what the first book is called. And Blood Debts was really good. I was nervous that Blood Justice was not going to be as good because oftentimes the sequel just doesn't hit the same way the original does, or the first one does. So I was nervous, but I liked it. I thought it was great. It's definitely going to go in the "Where Have You Been All My Life" category. No question about it. Next, we have Leather and Lark. And Leather and Lark was a disappointment. I liked Butcher and Blackbird, had high expectations for Leather and Lark. Leather and Lark did not deliver. The girl in Leather and Lark, I found her to be, the way she was written, it was just like they wanted her to be like this sweet, like doll baby who like kills people. And I guess they felt like putting these two things like juxtaposed to each other, like, oh, she's so sweet like a lollipop, but also like she'll tear your face off. I don't know. I feel like they were trying too hard to like drill that home. That she kind of lost a personality in the process, and so I found her to be a little bit annoying and a little bit like kind of like her character for me like fell a little flat. So I'm gonna put this in the not the worst because it was all right, but it definitely wasn't as good as Butcher and Blackbird. That's for sure. Cabin in the Woods. Cabin would feel more like a thriller to you, but now that you've said that, haven't read? You haven't? Oh my gosh, Coda, what are you doing? You have to read this book. You have I need you to read this because I want to know what you're going to say about it. I need to know what you think about it. Oh my gosh. Salem's Lot. I have thought about reading this, especially because the show came out. I think HBO Max has the show. And I want to watch that. And the show, like the trailer from what I've seen, looked pretty scary. So I do want to watch it. And like I said, I like to read the book before I watch the adaptation. So Salem's Lot is technically on my TBR. Eyeballs? Wait, what is eyeballs for? Yeah, Blood Debts. Yep. Recommend. Love them both. I'm so glad that you love them. Yep. Blood Debts was so good. Blood Justice was also good. So I'm glad that you like them both. And if you like lit that explores mental health and relationships, there are more friendship type relationships. But I have not read A Little Life because from what I've heard, it is very traumatic. It's also very long. If the book was shorter, I probably would read A Little Life. But that book is so big. I would be like Rainy, where I would start it and then like a year later still haven't finished it. So I don't even want to start it because I know that I won't finish this book. Don't worry, it's been on my TBR since you first mentioned it. Oh, nice. Oops. Leather and Lark was yeah, it really was. It's sad because Butcher and Blackbird was pretty good, and I'm interested to see when the third one comes out. Is the third one gonna like redeem itself, or is the third one also gonna be a disappointment like Leather and Lark was? We'll see. Oh, read with your eyeballs. That's fair. That's fair. Let's see. Who's next? All the Best Liars. So this is a book that I had on my TBR because it is part of my self-destruct. So I had to read it. Otherwise, I had to unhaul it without reading it. And we don't want to waste money here. So we didn't want that to happen. And this was another one, kind of like with Dark Matter, where I had it on my TBR for a while. Like I've had it for like a year or two just sitting on my shelf. And the longer it sat on my shelf, the less I was incentivized to like want to read it. And then I kept thinking like, oh, it's probably not going to be that good. Like it was the same kind of thing that happened to me when I read Dark Matter. But then I read it and it wasn't bad. It really wasn't. It wasn't anything like spectacular or amazing, but it wasn't bad. Like I think that I enjoyed it for what it was. It wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be, or as I kept like telling myself it was going to be. So I'm gonna put this in the not the worst category. Yeah, I feel like that's a good place for it. Next we have The Lifeguards by Amanda Iyer Ward. And I think I talked about this in today's video. So if you haven't watched that, then you'll get to hear a little bit about it now, but I won't go too much into it because again, talked about this in the video already. But I kind of knew that I wasn't going to like this going into, like, I kind of anticipated that I wasn't going to like this just from things that I had heard about it. But at the time that I started hearing those things, I had already owned the book because originally I was hearing good things about it. So that's why I bought it. But then I started hearing not so great things about it. And then I was like, well, it's too late. I already have it. So I kind of knew, kind of was already expecting that it wasn't going to be great. So I'm going to put this in the, I read this, regretting life choices. We're going to put this in regretting life choices because I feel like it doesn't really fit the I read this because again, I did read it. I remember reading it and I remember the important parts. I don't remember all the details of what happened in the story, but I remember like the highlights enough. And even that is kind of like not interesting. Like even the highlights are kind of boring. So we're going to put it in the regretting my life choices. I definitely regret purchasing the book. That's for sure. I wish I had not bought it. I wish I had just waited and like read it through Libby or something. So that I wouldn't have a book on my shelf that I spent my money on that I don't like. A Little Life is long and traumatic and overly so, but purposefully overly so. But the writing is immaculate, especially concerning character development and connecting you emotionally to multiple. I'm assuming the rest of this message is going to come through soon. And yes, I believe you. I believe that it probably is like very well written. I just don't know that I can stay in a story because the story is so long, because the book is so long. I don't know that I can stay in that long enough to finish it because I'm probably going to want out sooner than I can finish the book. So that's the reason why I haven't started it. While those people felt like I knew these. Yeah, I believe you. I believe you. I think that if the story was shorter, it definitely would be the kind of book that I would want to read. But with it being so long, that is like what makes me. Oh wait, we skipped a message. The audio is perfection. The narrator does such a great job. It's one of the only books I've ever read in a long time where I got to the end and felt like the story was for. Oh, okay, gotcha. Like you knew these people. That makes sense. And I believe you. I believe that it's a good book. I don't really know anybody who has read it who like didn't like it. There are people who didn't like how heavy it was, But like that's life, man. You know what I mean? Like if it's well written, then it's well written. If you didn't like how heavy it was, then it is what it is. But I've heard nothing but good things in terms of like how the characters are written. But like I said, it's heavy and it's long, and I don't know if I want to be in something that long that's going to be that heavy. Next we have Lore Olympus. This was cute. This was fun. I was not expecting what I got from this. Like, I'm pretty sure. I don't remember how many volumes of this I read. I think I might have read like the first two or something. But like in the beginning, it kind of starts off with someone. I don't remember if there's actual essay or if there's just like an attempt or something. I can't remember. But I was just like, whoa, I didn't know that that's where this story was going. Like, this was like very early on. I was like, oh my goodness. Like, this is, I don't know, for some reason, I kind of thought that this was like not a kid's book, but like something that was maybe like a family appropriate, if that makes sense. And I would not describe this as family appropriate. So that was a little bit of a shock to me. I was not prepared for that, but it was good. I did like it. I don't really have any complaints about it. I wasn't like in love with it, but I don't have any complaints either. So I'm gonna put this in the "You Were This Close" category. Next is "This Is How You Lose the Time War," and I know that there are a lot of people that really like this book, and I'm so sorry that I'm not one of them. Again, this is one of those books, kind of like the Inheritance games, where it's like maybe it's me, like maybe I wasn't focused enough when I was reading it, and maybe that's the reason why I didn't enjoy it, because I was kind of just like, what are we talking about? Like what is happening right now? Like I was just a little bit lost trying to understand like the point of this and like where the story was going and like what the plot was. I don't know, it just kind of seemed a little boring. I didn't understand what the hype was. Don't really remember a lot of it, to be quite honest. So we're going to put this in the "I read this" category. That's where that's going to go. Next is "It's All Love," which is a book that Jenna Ortega wrote. And I've been a fan of Jenna Ortega since she was on Disney Channel. So it's really nice to see her kind of, evolve and see her success grow, whatever. So that's awesome. But yeah, she wrote a little book. And it's funny because I had made one of my goals for 2024 to read a poetry book, because I thought that this was a poetry book. And I was like, oh, I want to read this book. So like if I make this goal, this will force me to like read this book. Turns out this is not a poetry book. So I made that goal for no reason. It is more of like I don't know if you want to say like self-help or like maybe like a series of, I was gonna say essays, but they're not really essays. I don't really know how to describe what this is, but it's short, it's cute. There's a lot of really good messages in it. I think that if you're looking for a book to give to someone who was like middle school or high school age, this is definitely like a coming of age kind of book, like growing into being like a strong person and being confident and knowing how to lean on your friends and your family for support, like all of those kind of like good morals that you want to instill in young people. Like I think this is a good book for that. So I would definitely recommend if you're looking for like a gift maybe to get for someone, like a niece or a little sister or a daughter or whatever, like I would recommend this. But it was good. I liked it. It was short. It wasn't a whole lot to it, but it was, like I said, the messaging was really good. Lots of positivity and stuff. So nothing crazy. I'm gonna put this, I guess, in the "You Were This Close." Yeah, I guess. Ouch. I guess that feels right. We can put that there. Let's see. Next, we have "Only If You're Lucky" by Stacey Willingham. This is Stacey Willingham's third book. I have read the first two, so this is like the only author whose work I've actually kept up with, and I'm like up to date on. But this was good. I think that like all of her books, you get to the end and there's a plot twist that sometimes there are multiple plot twists. So like there are some that you guess and there are others that you didn't guess. And so again, it's not like oh my gosh, like you blew my mind with this, but it's like this was still good. Like it was really good. I'm trying to decide if I want to put it in the "You Were This Close" or if I want to put this in the "Not the Worst." Let's see. I'm trying to look at like what else is in these categories already to try to figure out where I feel like this belongs. I think I'm gonna put this in the "You Were This Close," because I think that "Only If You're Lucky" is more closely related, like rating wise and stuff, to the books that are in that category than it is to the books that are in the "Not the Worst" category. Next we have "Master of Jinn." I already talked about this, and I told you guys that I didn't really like this book. So we are going to put this in... I'm going to put this in "I read this," because again, similar to the Inheritance game, and This Is How You Lose the Time War. It's like maybe I need to try again at a time where I can like focus better. Maybe I would like it. Like I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt. I really didn't enjoy those 3 books, like Inheritance Games, This Is How You Lose the Time War, and Master of Jen. I really didn't enjoy them, but it's possible that maybe I just need to give it a second chance. So we'll put it in the I read this question mark because I don't really remember a lot about it other than the fact that I didn't really have a good time with it. There's nothing that I remember that was like bad where it's like, oh, I hate it that this happened, or I hate it, whatever. Like it wasn't like that. But I just remember that I didn't have a good time. Let's see. Next is Memento Mori, and you can't really see the full cover because the cover of this book is like in landscape instead of in portrait. I don't know why. But this was a book that was, well, it's like a short story that was written by Jonathan Nolan, who is, what's the other? Christopher Nolan's brother. So Jonathan Nolan wrote the short story, and then Christopher Nolan did the movie, which is kind of a cool thing to be able to do that, all in house. Family full of talented people, apparently. But yeah, this was really good. I actually was blown away by this story, and I was even more blown away with how they expanded the story to make the movie. I thought it was kind of incredible. Like the concept of it was pretty incredible. So I'm gonna put this in the Where Have You Been All My Life. I was very impressed. Next is If I Never Met You. I buddy read this with Leandra and Danny. This was good. It wasn't what I was expecting. Because I knew it was a romance, but it was a romance, and I'm pretty sure Leandra was the one that picked this. So Leandra's romances are very different from like the mainstream romances. So I wasn't really sure like if it was going to be like more serious, more drama. Like I didn't really know what to expect, but it was good. There's definitely a lot of stuff in here about like individuality, like finding yourself and like being confident in yourself and not relying on or being dependent on other people. Not having to be in a relationship to find fulfillment, like all that kind of stuff. So I liked it for what it was. It wasn't like the best book that I've ever read. There are definitely romances that I, liked more than this one. So I think I'm gonna put it in not the worst. It probably realistically is somewhere in between not the worst and You Were This Close, but I don't feel like it quite measures up to the other books in the You Were This Close category. So we're gonna put it in not the worst. And next we have Mistress of Lies. This was for, there was a, I don't know if it's considered a book club, but Jen from Genderqueer and Pac over in Bad Witch Books, they highlighted a bunch of different authors that were a part of, I forget what happened, but there was some kind of incident where some author was like going around and like giving like 1-star reviews and kind of being like a dick to a bunch of other authors. And so Jen and Paco like wanted to highlight those authors that were getting that mistreatment or whatever, like highlight, because these were all like debuts and stuff, and I think they were also all people of color, or part of the LGBTQ community. So they wanted to highlight these books and highlight these authors, and so each month, or I don't know if it was each month or every other month, they picked one of those books or one of those authors, and they always would have like a different guest read it with them and be a part of their live show. So I was a part of the live show for the Mistress of Lies book, and I didn't dislike this, but I also didn't love this either. I will say that this was a vampire book, and I liked this vampire book more than I liked Serpent and the Wings of Night. I will say that. So I think I'm going to put this in the I read this question mark category, because again, I don't feel like it's good enough to go with the stuff that's in the not the worst category. But like I said, I remember it being better than Serpents. That's what I will say. Next is Moon Called. I read this for the Mystic Readathon. This was, I think, one of the poll pick wins. It was good. It wasn't anything crazy. I think I also would probably put this in the not the worst, or I read this question mark. I'm kind of leaning towards I read this. Yeah, I think that's a good place for it. Put this in I read this. This book it's interesting. There's a lot of characters. So I think if I was going to continue the series, I would have to reread this book, because there's a lot of characters that you get introduced to, and a lot of different like types of characters or like creatures. Like you have werewolves, you have vampires, you have, I forget what the main character is. She's not a wolf. She's something else, because I think she turns into a fox and not a wolf. So there's all these like other different like mythological or like, you know, creatures or whatever that are in this book that I was not familiar with. I think there are some other characters or creatures too that I wasn't familiar with because I don't read a lot of like shifter stuff and whatnot. But yeah, I would reread this again. I do want to continue the series at some point. It probably won't be anytime soon, but it wasn't terrible. It wasn't terrible, but there's a lot of it that I either didn't quite catch as I was reading it or stuff that I don't remember. So I would need to refresh my memory before continuing on with the series. Yes, I'm here. Hello. Next is The Naturals. And I like this book. It didn't quite live up to the hype that what people were saying. It wasn't that good, but it wasn't bad either. Like I like The Naturals more than I like The Inheritance Games, which is by the same author. So I'm going to put this in not the worst. And I do plan to continue the series. Next is Never Let Me Go. And we talked about this. I think it was on Vanessa's Sprints. We talked about this earlier today. Yeah, did not like this book. It was very slow, very dry, very boring. We were just moving in slow motion the entire time, and I could not stand it. The concept was cool. I won't say what the concept is because I know that I went into it not knowing really what it was about. And so that made it a little more interesting for me to try to like figure out what was going on. I feel like if you already know like what the premise is and what the concept is, then it's going to make the story even more boring because there's nothing for you to figure out. You're just going to be sitting there reading a bunch of boring people doing boring things. So I won't say what it's about, but I'm going to put this in the Regretting My Life choices. This wasn't really a choice, to be fair. I had to read this book because it was part of the Battle of the Booktubers. So I had no choice but to read this. But yeah, regret. I wish I could go back in time and spend that time that I spent reading this book doing literally anything else. Oops. I just got back from running errands and going out to eat. Ooh, where'd you go? What'd you get to eat? Next is Nevermore. This was a fun book. I had such a fun time with this. I was not expecting to like this as much as I did, especially because it's middle grade and I don't really read middle grade books. The couple of middle grade books that I have read have been very like meh, you know. But this was good. This kind of reminds me the same way that I was talking about Carval and how Carval did a good job of like balancing the magic and the whimsiness. I don't know what the tense of that word is, but y'all know what I'm trying to say. It balances that well with like the danger and like the risk and the lives that are at stake and all that kind of stuff. I think Nevermore did that really well. Especially for a middle grade book, I think it also did that really well, where it balanced the magic with like the oh no, we're all gonna die kind of thing. So I'm gonna put this in the you were this close category. Why won't this move over? Why does it never go where I want it to go? All right. Next is None of This Is True. And if you watch the vlog that I did for that back in like June, then you already know that I don't like this book. Or if you watched my best and worst books of 2024 video that came out earlier today, you would also know that I did not like this book. This is immediately going in the Regretting My Life Choices category. There's no question about it. That's where it has to go. I won't even go into detail or explain anything about this book because, like I said, I have a whole reading blog for this already. Plus, I talked about it in today's video, so I'm done talking about this book. I don't want to think about this book ever again. Next is Only When It's Us. This was also part of the Battle of the Booktubers. So None of This Is True was part of the Battle of the Booktubers. Never Let Me Go was part of Battle of the Booktubers. And Only When It's Us is also part of Battle of the Booktubers. This was cute. The beginning was kind of annoying, but the end, you started to actually get some character development and stuff, and like the romance started happening, and it was like, oh, okay, like now I can get into this. But it took a while to get there. It was an uphill battle to get there. Also, I think I talked about this because, again, with it being part of Battle of the Booktubers, I have a whole like blog dedicated to this. But I didn't love what it did with because this has like deaf representation. And so I didn't love what it kind of implied when it came to that. It almost kind of seemed like the male main character is the one that is like deaf or hearing impaired. I can't remember if he's deaf or he's hearing impaired, but it almost seemed like he had to change himself and like get a hearing aid so that he could communicate with her better so that they can fall in love. It was like it didn't seem like she was making the effort to meet him where he was. It was like he had to make the effort to meet her where she was. And all too often, I know that it is a grievance that people that are part of the deaf community have where it's like we as hearing people don't try to meet them where they're at. We just expect them to change themselves so that they can be where we are, which is not fair to them. And I feel like this book kind of did that. So I didn't love that. But other than that, it wasn't terrible. I think I'm gonna put this in the not the worst category. Because again, like I said, it wasn't awful, but could have been done better for sure. We got hand pulled noodles. That sounds lovely. Next is Girl on the Porch. I don't remember why I read this. I'm pretty sure it had something to do with a readathon, but I don't remember which readathon it was for. This was good. It was a short story. It was creepy. To be honest, I don't. Oh, yes, I was gonna say I don't remember what even happened in the end, but I do remember now. I think I'm gonna put this in the I read this category because it's not super memorable, but it also like it wasn't bad. It just wasn't very memorable. I think that this is one of those books that when you get to the end and you get the resolution kind of takes away from like how scary. I use the term scary loosely. How scary things were. Once you get to the end, you're like, oh, that's all it was. It's like, oh, okay. Because at first I'm like, oh my gosh, like what's happening? Like this is crazy. Like this is, whatever. Then you get to the end and you're just like, oh, all right. Well, now I'm done with that, I guess. Hello to Vanessa. What's up, neighbor? Yeah. So yeah, not very memorable. Not bad. If you're looking for a short book, check it out. It was a interesting thriller. The ending was kind of lackluster, but it was fine. Next is The President's Brain is Missing. I reread this in 2024 because I read it for the first time in 2023 for the Get a Clue readathon. But I don't remember why I reread this. I think I reread it kind of like by accident. I think I was looking for something. And the only way for me to find it was for me to get the audiobook from Libby because I was trying to find something in the book. And because the book is so short, I think it's like a 40-minute audiobook. And if you listen to it at 2 times speed, it's a 20-minute audiobook. So I just re-listened to the whole 20 minutes. I was like, I'll just re-listen to the whole thing. It was still just as good the second time around as it was the first time around. I think this book is really funny. I really like it. I'm going to put it in the Where Have You Been All My Life category because it was funny. But there's not really a whole lot to say about it because it's so short. It just was very humorous. Next is A Proposal by Jasmine Guillory. Was not a fan. It was very, I don't know, kind of boring. Their romance, I just had a hard time buying it. They were both kind of just dry people and uninteresting, to be honest. Not a lot of character development. It was fine. If you're looking for like a mindless, nothing's really happening here kind of romance for the summertime, then go for it. But like, you're not missing anything if you don't read this book. So I'm going to put this in the I read this question mark because I don't really remember much about it except for the fact that I was pretty underwhelmed, underimpressed, and bored. Next is The Resort. I talked about this. I hated this book. This was my least favorite, like my most hated book of 2024. So there's no question about it. This is definitely going in the regretting life choices. I would have rather used that time to have done anything else except read this book because it was a complete waste of my time. Next is Alice Feeney's Rock, Paper, Scissors. This book was so good. Love this. This is going to go in the Where Have You Been All My Life. I was nervous going into this because I felt like it was overhyped and I didn't think I was going to like it, but then it turns out it was appropriately hyped and I loved it. Yo, Coda, I cannot with y'all. You guys are a mess. Next is Role Playing by Kathy Yardley. This was a book that I read purely out of FOMO. Everybody was reading this book. I want to think it was during TAR, maybe. I can't remember when it was. But at some point, for some readathon, everybody was reading this book. I felt left out and I needed to know what was going on. So I decided to pick it up. And I'm glad that I did because it's not very often that I get to read books that have like ace representation. So I love, love, love the fact that this book had ace representation and showing that in like a romantic setting, like seeing them build this romance, but knowing that like, they're ace or whatever. Like I thought that was really cool. The only other book that I've read that's a fictional book that involves ace characters as like a main character. There are books that I've read where like they might have like an ace like best friend, but like the best friend is not like a major player in the story. So the fact that these were like the main characters, this was the only book that I've really read like that besides Loveless. And in Loveless, I'm pretty sure at the end of Loveless, our main character who's Ace isn't with anybody. She's not in a romantic relationship or anything like that with anybody. I can't remember, but I don't think it ends with her being with anybody, which is fine. Like that's fine. But I like the fact that in role playing, you actually got to see that like they are with someone. I think a lot of times people think that like if you're ace that you don't date or or that that's hard to date or whatever. So I like the fact that this book showed that like you can be in a relationship and also be ace. So like that was really cool. So this is going in the Where Have You Been All My Life category because this was awesome. I'm so glad that I got FOMO and decided to read it. And then the romantic agenda, speaking of ace, the romantic agenda is also a story about our main character is Ace. I can try to remember. I think she also ends up in a relationship by the end of it. I think the difference between these two, they're both going to go in the Where Have You Been All My Life category. But the romantic agenda was much more like light and fluffy and like kind of like comedic. And I feel like the role playing was a little more serious or a little more like mature. I don't know. It wasn't so like light and fluffy and goofy, which is nothing wrong with being light and fluffy and goofy. Like I love me a good rom-com. I don't know that I would describe role playing as a rom-com. It was more of just like a regular romance or like a regular like contemporary story. It wasn't necessarily like light and fluffy and funny and goofy. So just two different ways, I guess, of telling a story about ace characters who are in romantic relationships. I think that's really cool. Next is One in Rome. Oh wait, hold on, JK. Red role playing. Oh, okay. So, ow. My life. Yes, it was fantastic. I agree. Red role playing during Tar, so it was during Tar. That's what I thought, but I couldn't remember. But it was Team Romances. But okay, so that's what it was. I was on Team Spooky, but anytime that I would be like in sprints, everybody was talking about role playing, and I was like, I have to read this book because everybody's talking about it, and I feel left out. Oh, was your oh nice. So yeah, I would say out of all of the Ace books that I've read, I think that probably is the best one. Well, yeah, I think it's the best one in terms of it being, like I said, a little more serious. If you're looking for something that's a little lighter and fluffier, like sillier, then the romantic agenda was really good. And then you have Loveless, which Loveless is more of like a coming of age, like people that are transitioning from like high school into college and finding themselves and that whole thing. So lots of different like vibes, different like moods, I guess, if you will, when it comes to Ace stories. But yeah, I highly recommend checking out more. I love me a good Ace story. Chef's Kiss had no idea I was reading what I was reading until I knew what I was reading. Yeah, agree. I'm assuming that you're talking about Rock Paper Scissors. Agree. I had the plot twist. It was twisting. Okay, when I got to it, I was like, shut up! Like, no way. I was so mad at myself. I'm like, how did I not see this coming? But also, like, I'm so glad that I didn't see this coming because it made the story so much better that it was able to surprise me. Wild. Same. Claire Com writes Ace characters. Oh, nice. So the Romantic Agenda, I think, is the only book that I've read by Claire Com, but I do want to read more of her stuff. But I didn't know that she had more books that had like Ace characters. I didn't know that. Nice. I'm gonna have to check her out and read more of her stuff. For some reason, I thought that she only had like nonfiction stuff. I don't know why I thought this was the only like fiction book that she wrote. I was on Team Romance. Didn't get to read role playing during TAR, but definitely influenced to read it afterwards. Yes, for sure. Highly recommend. And it was nice and wholesome too. It was nice and wholesome, and also I thought it was interesting too because role playing, the main characters are older. Like I think they're like in their late 40s, maybe like early 50s, something like that. And I had never read a story with characters that were in that age group because most of the stories that I read, they're either like in high school or in college or in their 20s or like, early 30s. So reading a story that features characters that are like my parents' age was interesting. And I didn't know if I was going to like that, but I actually really did. She doesn't have a lot of books out, but all three romances. Oh, okay, nice. I will have to check those out. I had to go back and reread some parts. Like, how did I miss that? Once it was revealed, I was like, you know what? I should have figured this out. It was right in front of my face the entire. Like, I didn't even have to go back. I immediately knew. I was just like, yep, they did it. They pulled the wool over my eyes. It was right in front of my face the entire time, and I just missed it. I'm so mad at myself. Uh, really, I don't necessarily go out of my way to find asexual romances. I would like to find more, but I will be honest and say that I don't necessarily like go in search of them. So if you have like recommendations, let me know. Next is When in Rome. So just like with Fake It Till You Bake It, how I only read that book originally because I knew that I was going to be doing the Hear No Evil, See No Evil, Speak No Evil challenge. That was the same reason why I read When in Rome. I actually had no intentions of reading that book before then. I knew of it, had heard about it, didn't have an interest in it. It was Grumpy Sunshine, I think, which is not one of my favorite tropes. Well, at the time before I read it, it wasn't one of my favorite tropes. I have actually grown to love it because there's another book on this list that is a Grumpy Sunshine that I like loved and didn't think I was going to. And so the kind of the same thing happened with When in Rome. When in Rome was actually how I realized that I think I do like Grumpy Sunshine because I was convinced I was like, I don't like Grumpy Sunshine. I don't like it. And then I read When in Rome and I was like, you know what? I think actually I do like it because this is the second book that I read like this that I really enjoyed. Maybe I just don't know myself as well as I thought I did. But yeah, I read it for that video that we did where we made the pies because I felt like it would be weird to reference a book in a video that I haven't actually read. Thought that would have been strange. I was like, I need to read this book. So I read it and I liked it. I think I gave it like 4.5 stars or something. Had a great time with it. I actually just finished the second book in this series, The Practice Makes Perfect. Just finished that a couple of days ago, maybe like a week ago. And that was also good. I think I like the plot and like the characters and the romance more in When in Rome. But I think that there's a lot of very relatable stuff when it comes to like childhood trauma, for lack of better words, and how that affects your ability to like date and be healthy in a relationship and stuff. There's a lot of that in Practice Makes Perfect, and I really liked that perspective that you get. So it's hard to say which one I like better, but I think I might have liked When in Rome better, maybe. But I don't feel like I took as much away from When in Rome. I had fun. It was a fun story, but I didn't like take away anything. I took a lot more away from reading Practice Makes Perfect, but it wasn't as much fun, if that makes sense. So I'm gonna put When in Rome in the do I put it in Where Have You Been All My Life or do I put it in You Were This Close? I'm gonna put it. I'm gonna put it in You Were This Close. That's where we're. I was gonna put it in Where Have You Been All My Life, but I think I'm gonna put it in You Were This Close. Next is the rule book, also by Sarah Adams. I read the rule book because I had read the cheat sheet and I realized the rule book was the next book. And I think I had like a gap again in between the book that I had just finished and when my next buddy read was starting. So I needed something to fill it. So I decided to read the rule book. So this was my third Sarah Adams book at this point. And this book was fine. It wasn't as good as the cheat sheet. It also was not as good as When in Rome. It was fine, but like not as fine, I guess, as the cheat sheet. So I'm trying to decide, whoops, going the wrong way. I'm trying to decide if I want to put this in not the worst or I read this question mark. I think I'm gonna put it in not the worst. Think that's a good place for it to go. That's a safe spot for it. Love Grumpy Sunshine. See, I think I like it now, but for some reason, I didn't think that I did before. Love Girlfriend Social. Adding this to my list. Yeah, go for it. Go for it. Next is Out There Screaming. I'm going to put this in the not the worst category. There were some stories in here that I really liked, and then there were some stories in here that I was just like, what the heck was that? So this is going to go in not the worst. I think, again, that's a safe spot for it to go. Next is Man's Search for Meaning. I read this as part of the Vampire Diaries cast recommends me books. This was the book that Zach Rorick, who plays Matt on the show, this was his recommendation for me. This was interesting, especially because it starts off almost like a memoir. So like the first half of the book reads like a memoir of a guy who survived the Holocaust, which just kind of like put me in a weird state because I'm just like, why would you recommend me this book? I'm like very confused as to why Zach recommended this. But then you get to the second half of the book, and that's when you get more into like the psychology and like the mental piece of it. And I guess like the memoir piece was kind of like setting the foundation so that when he starts explaining the psychology stuff, he can like refer back to this story and like use it as examples for what he's trying to describe. So once I got through it, I was like, oh, okay, like now I understand. But getting through that, I'm just like, why the heck did this man recommend me a memoir from a Holocaust survivor? Like, what? It was interesting. I don't necessarily agree with this particular school of thought, but it was still interesting getting the perspective, and I understand the perspective. I just don't necessarily agree with it. I am going to put this in the not the worst category. It's a book that I probably would read again. I just would skip that first section, that whole first half. That's like the memoir piece. I would skip that. But I would reread like the psychology piece of it again, just to kind of like refresh my memory because it was interesting. It was. Got Out There Screaming for Christmas. Looking forward to reading it. Very cool. Yeah, there are some stories that are like really, really good. There are other stories where I'm just like, I don't know what that was. So it'll be interesting once you read it, Jamie, to see like which ones you like versus which one you're kind of like, maybe not so much. That's what happens when you read anthologies. And next is Serpent in the Wings of Night. And funny enough, I accidentally included this in my list for the video that came out today. I didn't realize until I started talking about it that it was actually number 6 on the list. I had accidentally swapped when I had written the list down on I literally had it written down on a piece of paper, and I accidentally flip-flopped Serpent and the Wings of Night and When the Moon Hatched. So I wrote down Serpent and the Wings of Night when I was supposed to have written down When the Moon Hatched. And then as I was talking about serpents, I was like, wait a minute. Because what I was about to say, oh, I didn't like this book for the same reasons that I didn't like When the Moon Hatched. And then as I was in the process of getting ready to say that sentence, I was like, wait, When the Moon Hatched is the book that I should be talking about right now, not serpents. So then I had to switch gears. So it's a pretty clear indicator that I did not have a great time with this. I'm going to put this, I'm trying to decide, does it go in not the worst? Does it go in I read this ? I think I'm going to put this in I read this ? I feel like that's the best spot for it. Just looking at where other books are, I feel like that's the place that makes the most sense. Because it wasn't as bad as When the Moon Hatched, but it also wasn't as good as some of these other books in the not the worst category. So we're going to go with that. Next is A 7-Year Slip. And we were talking about this earlier today on Brittany's Friends. I didn't really get the hype over this book. This book was kind of, I don't know, it just seemed like they fell in love over the course of a single weekend. And I'm just like, what? Okay. No, it was weird. The romance was weird. They spent all of 2 days together and suddenly they were in love. And I'm just like, all right. But I did like the grief discussion in this, and the way that this book handles, the people who are left behind when someone unalives themselves. I liked the way that it discussed that. And like I said, the way that it talked about grief and stuff. So for that reason, I will put it in not the worst. But if it wasn't for that topic of grief and all that, it probably would have been in the I read this category. Next is Shatter Me. This was a reread. I read this, I reread this last year because my plan was to read the entire series. So I wanted to start over. Did not make it through the entire series. I only read Shatter Me again. And then I read the novella that comes right after it. And that was as far as I got. So now this year, I'm going to try to actually read the entire series. There's also another book coming out in this series, which I did not know about until like a couple weeks ago when Katie told me. Apparently, there's another one coming out. I thought this series was done. Apparently, it's not. So, in preparation for that next book that's coming out, I want to actually finish the series, and I have the entire series behind me on my shelf, and I just haven't read it. So, I think there are like 11 or 12 books, including the new one that's coming out. There's like 11 or 12 books or something. So, what I'm going to try to do is read one each month, and that way, hopefully, by the end of the year, I will have finished the series, including the newest book. We will see if by the end of the year I actually stick to that. But that is going to be the plan. But when I read this the first time, I gave it 5 stars. I read it the second time, still 5 stars. Love this story. I don't know, it's something. I'm not really a big sci-fi person. I'm not a big dystopian person. Like, that's just not really my brand. That's not really my like style. But something about Shatter Me, it is like fast paced, and I think I really like Juliet as a character. I also like both of the male main characters. Both of them are really interesting. They're very different. One is like kind of a sweetheart, and one is like an evil like master. But like, I don't know. I just like the characters. I like the dialogue. Because I like that it's fast paced. I like the action. I like the plot. Like, there's not too much about this that I don't like, which is really surprising because I can't like put my finger on exactly why I like it when it is technically in a genre that I generally don't like. So, hello, Paul. How are you? How's it going? Let's see. Next, we have Signs. So, Signs is a book that I read also as part of the Vampire Diaries cast recommends me books. This was a recommendation from Ariel Kebbel, who plays Lexi on the show. And I did not think I was going to like this because it's written by someone who is a self-proclaimed like psychic medium, which I kind of tread lightly in terms of whether or not I believe that psychic mediums are like real, whether or not I believe in all of that. But I actually really like this book. Even if I don't necessarily believe or whatever, I still think that it was very moving and inspirational, and I had a good time reading it. Yeah, so I would put this in I'm trying to decide. You Were This Close or Not the Worst. Maybe we'll put it. This is actually kind of hard. This is harder than I thought it was going to be. Also, I'm not sure why Sleeping Girls Lie is on this list because I did not read that book last year. Just noticed that should not be there. Anyway, back to Signs. Maybe we put it with. Where did I put the Viktor E. Frankl book and Not the Worst? Okay. We're gonna put this in the You Were This Close for now. I might move it, but that's what we're gonna go with for now. Where Sleeping Girls Lie is not even supposed to be here. I don't know how that ended up in the list. We're just gonna move that out the way. How to Solve Your Own Murder. Buddy read this with Danny and Leandra. I really enjoyed this. This was a fun time. This is kind of along the same lines and like the same vibes as Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone. I do think that Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone is better than How to Solve Your Own Murder, but it's like similar vibes. Like if you like one, you'll probably like the other. So I'm gonna put this in the Where Have You Been All My Life because it was good enough that I could put it up there. Next is Suburban Hell, which, speaking of Danny and Leandra, Suburban Hell was actually the first book that the three of us ever buddy read together. And the book was awful, but we had such a fun time talking about the book. I think that this book, similar to Ghost Station, there were a lot of missed opportunities. And so we had more fun kind of like rewriting the book ourselves within our group chat than we did like reading what was already written by the author. So it's like, as much as I want to say regretting my life choices because it was a terrible book, there is a part of me that like doesn't regret reading this because I had a lot of fun discussing it with Danny and Leandra, and also that was what kind of kicked off us reading as many books as we read together. That's kind of how it started. So I don't regret it per se, but it was a terrible book, so it's gonna go down there. Next is Just for the Summer, which is an Abby Jimenez book that is in the same world or the same universe as Yours Truly, which is one of my favorite books of all time. It's also in the same universe as Part of Your World. All three of these books take place in the same universe. Needless to say, this book was fantastic. It was great. I don't think that it was better than Yours Truly. I think that I would say that it was equal to Part of Your World, but Yours Truly is still better than both of them. So I'm going to put this in the Where Have You Been on My Life category. Well, I'm going to try to. It's not moving. There we go. Need to put this over here. All right. Next, we have Love Theoretically. I talked earlier about Ella Hazelwood and how I didn't like the book that I read from her. This was the book that I read. Didn't like it. I'm going to put this in, trying to decide. Does it go in I read this ? Or does it go in regretting my life choices? I think, yeah, it's going to go in regretting my life choices. This was actually the first book club pick for my book club. We started with this book in January, and I did not like it. We read this in January, then we read A Master of Gin in February, didn't really like that. And then March was Unwinding Anxiety. I don't know what we did for May. And then I think June was Alone with You in the Ether. So, yeah. Next is Things We Never Got Over. This was the book that I was so shocked. First of all, this book is pretty chunky for a romance. And I only read this book because it was the only book on the list that I got for the 5-star exchange that I either hadn't already read or like could actually get access to, because sometimes there may be books on the list that like you haven't read it, but if you can't get it anywhere because, you know, it's not at the library or whatever like that, this was the only book that I could read off of that list. And so I was like, okay, I guess I have to read this. Was dragging my feet, dreading it, did not want to read this. And then read it and freaking loved it. This was like the first like true Grumpy Sunshine romance that I read that I was just like, oh, this is good. And so that's why when I got to One in Rome and that was Grumpy Sunshine, I was like, I don't know. And then I finished that and I was like, oh, this was good. I was like, wait, maybe I like Grumpy Sunshine? So yeah, this is going to go in the Where Have You Been on My Life. I have not continued this series, but I definitely plan to continue this series. I wanted to, but I just didn't get around to it. So yeah, I'm hoping that maybe this year I can finish out the series, because I think it's just a trilogy. So hopefully I'm able to get to the second and third book this year, but we'll see. Next is Think You'll Be Happy by Nicole Avant. This was also part of the Vampire Diaries cast recommends me books. This was the book that Kat Graham, who plays Bonnie, she recommended this to me. And it was great. I didn't really know what to expect going into it because I didn't know who Nicole Avant was. If I'm being honest, I had never heard of her before. And I didn't know at the time that Kat told me about this book that it was nonfiction. I thought it was like a fictional story, and that Nicole Avant was just like an author, like just like a regular author. And then when I started reading it, I was like, oh, I think this is like a memoir. It's not like a true memoir, but it kind of is. So yeah, I was like, oh no, I didn't know I was being recommended a memoir. But then I read it and I was like, oh, this was actually really good. This also does a good job of talking about grief and things like that, and how to deal with change in your life and stuff like that. It was great. There's a lot of stuff that I highlighted in this book. I definitely recommend. I have a whole reading blog on this, so I won't spend too much time talking about it, but it was really good. And I'm gonna put this in the You Were So Close category. I don't think it lives up to the status of Where Have You Been on My Life, but You Were This Close. Yeah, I think that's a fair place to put it. So we're gonna put it there. Next is So Thirsty by Rachel Harrison. This book was a huge disappointment. I was so excited. The cover looked amazing. The synopsis sounded so cool. I was like, ooh, can't wait. It's vampires. Like, I felt like this book was made for me. And then I read it and I was like, wow, this book was super boring. Super boring, waste of my time. Would have rather have been doing anything else besides reading this. So this is gonna go in the regretting my life choices category because this was a major letdown for me. I'm really sad about it. Had high hopes. Ooh, next is This Could Be Us. Oh my gosh, I love this book so much. There's not enough good things that I could say. Like, this book is just perfection. Loved it. This is definitely going in the Where Have You Been All My Life category. Absolutely obsessed. And I think I talked about earlier when I talked about Before I Let Go, the fact that the only reason why I even started reading this series in the first place was because Vanessa had invited me to the book event that Kennedy Ryan was going to. That was the only reason why I even picked up Before I Let Go, and then was surprised when I actually liked it. And so getting to This Could Be Us was even better than Before I Let Go. So thank you, Vanessa, for like forcing me to read this, even though you probably didn't even know that that's what happened, but it is. So thank you so much for that, because this book changed my life. It was amazing. Yep. So good. So good. I cannot wait for the third book. Like, I don't know what the stories, again, I know it's gonna be Hendrix, but like I don't know what Hendrix is gonna be doing or like what the tropes are gonna be, but like I can't wait. And then riding this wave of great books, next is Today, Tonight, Tomorrow. This was a book just like with Dark Matter, and I forget what the other one was that I talked about, but there was another one that was on this list where I kind of put it off for a long time. And the longer I put off reading it, the more I thought that I wasn't going to like it. And I was wrong. I loved Today, Tonight, Tomorrow. I was not expecting to like it as much as I did. I was shocked at how much I liked this. The feels that I got when I was reading this were the feels that I thought I was going to get when I read Better Than the Movies. So I do want to give Better Than the Movies another try, but Today, Tonight, Tomorrow knocked it out of the park for me. Absolutely loved it. It gave me all the feels, those same feelings that I got when I was watching To All the Boys I Love for the first time. Like, just, I don't know, there's just something about these little, like, cutesy, funny romances and these, like, awkward characters. I just loved it. Loved every second of it. No complaints. Also, the history that you get, or like not history, but like all the information that you get about Seattle, I thought was really cool. I've never been to Seattle, but like reading this book made me want to go to Seattle. This could be us. Today, Tonight, Tomorrow sounds like your current read. Yes, it's funny that you say that because it is. Past, Present, Future is the sequel to Today, Tonight, Tomorrow. That is why I'm reading Past, Present, Future, because I like Today, Tonight, Tomorrow so much that I went like straight into the sequel. Well, not straight into it because I've read like a couple of books in between, but normally when I'm reading a book that's part of a series, I usually will take like months before I pick up the next one. But this one, it was like a couple of weeks. I read Today, Tonight, Tomorrow, like towards the end of December, and I finished Past, Present, Future like last week. Or no, not finished it. I started it last week. I'm still currently reading it. I think I'm at, let's see, how much do I have left? I think I'm at like the 60%, 63, 63%. So more than halfway done. And it's going well. I do think that I like the first book more. I think that Today, Tonight, Tomorrow is better in terms of like all the feels and like the lovey, like just happy, like funny, whatever. But I feel like there is more real stuff happening in Past, Present, Future. Similar to what I was saying about like When in Rome versus like Practice Makes Perfect, where I got more out of Practice Makes Perfect, but I had more fun with When in Rome. That is how I feel about this series, where I had more fun with Today, Tonight, Tomorrow, but I feel like I'm getting more out of Past, Present, Future. So, not complaining. Next is You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight. I don't remember why I read this. I think it might have been for Girl Band Readathon. It was good. I just don't remember what made me pick it up in the first place. But I want to think it must have been Girl Band Readathon. This was good, really interesting. What was even crazier was like once I finished this book, I realized that this book is actually kind of based on like true stuff, which I did not know. I had no idea until after I finished this book that some of this stuff is real. I was like, oh, that's scary, honestly. That's really scary. But it was good. I had a good time with it. It was interesting. It was, it was thrilling. It was fast paced or whatever. It was like your typical slasher. It was pretty good. So I'm gonna put this in the You Were This Close category. Next we have the Eric LaRocca book. I did not enjoy this. I was very disappointed. There's only one story in this book that I actually like really enjoyed, because it reminded me of another book. But yeah, very underwhelmed by this. I think I'm gonna put this in. It's either gonna go in the I read this category or the regretting my life choices category. I'm thinking. Do I regret my life choices? Kinda. Yeah, kinda. I'm gonna put it there. I think I regret, just like what I said about like the lifeguards, like I regret buying this book and spending my money on it. Not necessarily regret reading it because it's so short. It's like 200 pages, so it's like a really short book. So it wasn't like it took a whole lot of time out of my life, but the fact that it took money out of my pockets, not happy about that. Next is The Unboxing of a Black Girl. And this is a poetry book. So I talked earlier about how I created a goal for myself for 2024 to read a poetry book because I thought that this Jenna Ortega book, It's All Love, was a poetry book. Once I found out that It's All Love was not a poetry book, and now I needed to find a new book to fill that goal of reading a poetry book, I found The Unboxing of a Black Girl. I don't really remember it, like remember the specific things that are said or that happen in it, but I do remember listening to it and being like, oh yeah, this is pretty good. It's not anything that like stood out, but it also wasn't bad either, and it was pretty short. I think I'm gonna put this in the it's either gonna go in not the worst or it's gonna go in I read this question mark. The reason why I kind of want to put it in I read this question mark is because, like I said, I don't really remember a whole lot about it, but I feel like the other books that are in the I read this question mark category are books that I kind of didn't really enjoy. And I can't say that I didn't enjoy The Unboxing of a Black Girl. It just was short and not really memorable. So I think I'm gonna put this. I guess I can put this in the I read this question mark. Because it kind of is like similar to like Love in My Afterlife, where it's like I didn't necessarily dislike it, but it also wasn't like super memorable. So yeah, we'll put that there. Next is The Untethered Soul. I love this book. I think about this book daily. This was also part of the Vampire Diaries cast recommends me books. This was the book that Michael Trevino recommended to me, which is the guy that plays Tyler on the show, which y'all know that I'm obsessed with Tyler. But this book blew me away. It really did. The concepts in this book, I'm just like, I think that this category, the Where Have You Been All My Life category, was created for this book because there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about something in this book. It was so good. I love it. I would recommend it to anybody. You might not like it. I don't care. You should read it anyway. Next is Every Time I Go on Vacation, Someone Dies. This is a fun, like cozy, summery murder mystery. If you liked Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone, then you probably will like this book. There's not a whole lot to say, but it was a fun, like I said, fun, summery murder mystery book. It was funny. The narrator like breaks the fourth wall and like talks directly to you as if you're, there, or like you're part of the story or whatever. I love that when books do that. So, Where Have You Been in My Life? 5 stars. Next is All of Us Villains. I read this because this was part of my self-destruct list for 2024, so I needed to read it. Otherwise, I was going to have to unhaul it. It was fine. I wasn't impressed. I was a little bit mad, honestly. Not like, oh, it wasn't good mad, but like mad at the way that it ended because it almost ended it ended without a resolution. It's like you have to pick up the second book in order to get a resolution to the story, which I didn't like. I feel like if you're going to start a story, you can leave us on a cliffhanger, but like something that you have started has to get closed. And then you pose like a new question at the end. And then that is what carries us into the next book, if that makes sense. And I feel like this book started and then never closed. Like there was never an ending, there was never a conclusion, there's no resolution. It's just, oh, you have to wait till the next book. It felt like an episode of like a TV show where it's like, oh, catch us next week to find out what happens. I'm just like, no. You have to resolve this now, and they come up with a new problem to solve in the next book. But yeah, they didn't do that. So for that reason, I think I'm going to put this in I'm leaning towards putting it in the not the worst where I read this. I'm gonna say I read this ? Because it wasn't that memorable. We spent a lot of time like trying to do something but never actually doing anything. So yeah, because we didn't actually end up doing anything with it and like you have to read the next book to find out how it all plays out. I did not like that. It's gonna go in I read this. And I think that's it. Yeah, that's our last book. We did it. Because Where Sleeping Girls Lie is not a book that I read last year. I don't know why that's on this list. That's an accident. Ignore that. But yeah, this is it. This is what our list is looking like. These are our categories. This is how it panned out. So yeah, this is all 92 books that I read last year. It looks like I have quite a few in all the categories. I think the only category that doesn't really have a lot is the regretting my life choices, which is good. I'm glad that that is the category that has the least amount of books. I think that would be pretty bad if this category had a lot of books in it, because that means that I'm clearly not doing a good job of picking out books that I would like. So yeah, I'm happy with this. I would like for like if I do this next year, I would like to have less books down here in the orange and red and have more books, in the greens. But yeah, overall, I'm content with this. I think that if you look at the number of books that I have in the Where Have You Been All My Life category, there's quite a few books up here. So like that's a win for me. And even the You Were This Close category, that's still a win. There's a lot of books there. And then, there's a good number of like average, not the worst books. But yeah, this is a good list. I'm good with this. I'm happy with this. Yeah, it is. I'm glad that you enjoyed this. I'm glad that you were able to get some recommendations. Also, I love the fact that you love the Blood Justice books. That makes me so happy. But yeah, that is it. We are all done here. Let me know, like if you haven't already, commented like what books are there any books on here that you read last year or that you read ever? It doesn't matter if you read it last year or not. That like you loved and I also loved. Or on the flip side of that, are there books on this list that I said that I love that you hate? Or that I said that I hate that you love? I'm very curious to know how opposite some of these might be. But yeah, we are all done here. Thank you guys so much for being here, hanging out, watching this 2.5 hour video of me sorting my books and ranking them. I hope that, like Jamie, you guys got some good recommendations or got some insight into some books that maybe you've been considering reading, or got to relate with some people that love the same books that you love. Yeah, we do. Outside of the fact that you are a big dark romance person, outside of that, I'm working my way up there. Donna is slowly converting me to the dark side with all the dark romance we've been buddy reading. But yeah, outside of that, we do have a lot of similar taste. But yeah, I guess that's it. Thank you guys for being here. I will see you guys. Wind Down Wednesday obviously is happening. I think the next video that you guys are going to get, the next 2 videos, I don't know which one is going to come out first, but the next 2 videos is the finale vlog, not finale like the final vlog, finale like the Carvel book. That is going to be coming out. And then the last video for like the house, all the house stuff. Those are the next 2 videos that I have in the queue to edit for you guys. So those will be coming out in the next week or so. I have not read Lights Out, but Lights Out is on me and Donna's list of books to read for 2025. We have like a whole list of dark romance books to read this year, and Lights Out is on it. I know that Brooklyn, I think, is supposed to be reading it for her book club in March, I want to say. So I'm going to see if Donna wants to read it in March so that we can read it with Brooklyn. But yeah, it's on our list. It's on our list. But yeah. I will see you guys somewhere else on the internet. Have a wonderful rest of your Saturday, or possibly if you're in Australia, maybe it's already Sunday. But yeah, see you guys somewhere else. Also, I keep trying to figure out where the camera is. Bye.